devoted to penances, sung uttering the word Narayana, that high mantra which is worthy of being recited in silence. Sojourning through the welkin to the ocean of milk which is always the abode of nectar, and worshipping the great God there, he came back to his own hermitage. Bhishma continued, I have now repeated to thee the narrative that was recited by Narada, and to the conclave of rishis assembled in the abode of Brahman. That narrative has descended from one person to another from very ancient times. I heard it from my sire who formerly repeated it to me. Sutta continued, I have now told you all that Vaisampayana recited to Janamejaya. Having listened to Vaisampayana's narration, King Janamejaya properly discharged all his duties according to the ordinances laid down in the scriptures. Ye have all undergo very severe penances and observed many high and excellent vows. Residing in this sacred forest that is known by the name of Naimishka, ye are foremost of all persons conversant with the Vedas. Ye foremost of regenerate ones, ye all have come to this great sacrifice of Saunaka. Do ye all adore and worship that eternal and supreme Lord of the universe in excellent sacrifices, properly pouring libations of clarified butter into the fire with the aid of mantras and dedicating the same unto Narayana. As regards myself, I heard this excellent narrative that has descended from generation to generation, from my sire who recited it to me in former times. Section Xli. Saunaka said, How is that illustrious God, viz., the puissant Narayana, who is fully conversant with the Vedas and their branches, at once the doer and the enjoyer of sacrifices? Endued with forgiveness, he has adopted, again, the religion of nivritti, abstention. Indeed, it is that holy and puissant one who has himself ordained the duties of nivritti. Why then has he made many of the deities the takers of shares in sacrifices which, of course, are all due to the disposition of pravritti? Why has he again created some with a contrary disposition, for they follow the ordinances of the religion of abstention? Do thou, O Sutta, dispel this doubt of ours. This doubt seems to be eternal and is connected with a great mystery. Thou hast heard all discourses on Narayana, discourses that are consistent with their other scriptures. 1843. Soti said, O excellent Saunaka, I shall recite to thee what Vaisampayana, the disciple of the intelligent Vyasa, said when questions on these very topics by King Janamejaya. Having heard the discourse on the glory of Narayana, who is the soul of all embodied creatures, Janamejaya, endued with great intelligence and wisdom, questioned Vaisampayana on these very subjects. Janamejaya said, The whole world of beings, with Brahma, the deities, the Asuras and human beings, are seen to be deeply attached to actions which have been said to be productive of prosperity. Emancipation has, O regenerate one, been said by thee to be the highest felicity and to consist of the cessation of existence. They who, being divested of both merit and demerit, become emancipate, succeed, we hear, in entering the great God of 1,000 rays. It seems to be, O Brahmana, that the eternal religion of emancipation is exceedingly difficult of observance. Turning away from it, all the deities have become enjoyers of the libations of clarified butter poured with mantras on sacrificial fires and other offerings presented to them by the same or similar means. Then, again, Brahman and Rudra, the puissant Sakra, the slayer of valor, Surya, Chandramas, the lord of the stars, the wind god, the deity of fire, the deity of the waters, infinite space, as living being, the universe too, as a conscious agent, and the rest of the denizens of heaven, they, it seems, are ignorant of the way of securing annihilation of the conscious existence that is capable of being brought about by self-realization. 1844. Hence, perhaps, they have not betaken themselves to the path that is certain, indestructible, and immutable. Hence, perhaps, turning away from that path, They have adopted the religion of poverty, which leads to conscious existence that is measured by time. This, indeed, is one great fault that attaches to those that are wedded to actions, for all their rewards are terminable. This doubt, O regenerate one, is planted in my heart like a dagger. Remove it out by reciting to me some discourses of old on this topic. Great is my curiosity to listen to thee. For what reason, O regenerate one, have the deities been said to be takers of their respective shares of sacrificial offerings presented to them with the aid of mantras in sacrifices of diverse kinds? Why again are the denizens of heaven adored in sacrifices? And, O best of regenerate persons, to whom do they, that take their shares of offerings and sacrifices performed to their honor, themselves make offerings when they perform great sacrifices? Vaisampayana said, the question thou hast asked me, O ruler of men, relates to a deep mystery. No man that has not undergone penances, and that is not acquainted with the Puranas, can speedily answer it. I shall, however, answer thee by reciting to thee what my preceptor, the island-born Krishna, otherwise called Vyasa, the great rishi who has classified the Vedas, had said unto us on a former occasion when questioned by us. Sumanta, and Jaimini, and Pala of firm vows, and myself numbering the fourth, and Sukha forming the fifth, were disciples of the illustrious Vyasa. We numbering 5 in all, endued with self-restraint and purity of observances, had completely subjugated wrath and controlled our senses. Our preceptor used to teach us the Vedas, having the Mahabharata for their fifth. Once on a time, while we were engaged in studying the Vedas on the breast of that foremost of mountains, viz., the delightful Meru, inhabited by Siddhas and Charanas, this very doubt arose in our minds that has been expressed by thee today. We, therefore, questioned our preceptor about it. I heard the answer that our preceptor made. I shall now recite that answer to thee, O Bharata. Hearing these words that were addressed to him by his disciples, the dispeller of all kinds of darkness represented by ignorance, viz., the blessed Vyasa, the son of Parasara, said these words, I have undergone very severe, in fact, the austerest of penances. Ye best of men, I am fully conversant with the past, the present, and the future. In consequence of those penances of mine and of the restraint under which I kept my senses while I dwelt on the shores of the ocean of milk, Narayana became gratified with me. As the result of the great God's gratification, this omniscience with respect to the past, the present, and the future, that was desired by me, arose in my mind. Listen now to me as I discourse to you, in due order, on this great doubt that has disturbed your minds. I have, with the eye of knowledge, beheld all that occurred in the beginning of the Kalpa. He who both the Sankhya's and those conversant with yoga called by the name of Paramatma, the Supreme Soul, comes to be regarded as Mahapurusha, the great Purusha, in consequence of his own acts. From him springs forth the Bhyakta, the unmanifest, whom the learned call Pradhana. From the puissant and manifest sprang, for the creation of all the words, the manifest, by actor. He is called Aniruddha. That Aniruddha is known among all creatures by the name of the Mahadatma. It is that Aniruddha who, becoming manifest, created the Grand Sai Brahman. Aniruddha is known by another name, viz., Ahankara, consciousness, and is endued with every kind of energy. Earth, wind, space, water, and light numbering the fifth. These are the 5 Mahabhutas, elements, that have sprung from Ahankara. Having created the Mahabhutas, 5 in number, he then created their attributes. 1845, combining the Mahabhutas, he then created diverse embodied being. Listen to me as I recount them to you. Marichi, Angiras, Atri, Pulastya, Pulaha, Kratu, the high-souled Vasishta, and the self-born Manu, these should be known as the 8 Prakritis. Upon these rest all the worlds. Then the grandsire of all the world, viz., Brahman created, for the fulfillment of all creatures, the Vedas with all their branches, as also the sacrifices with their limbs. From these 8 Prakritis have sprung this vast universe. Then sprang Rudra from the principle of wrath. Starting into life, he created 10 others that were like him. These 11 Rudras are called by name of Vigara Purushas. The Rudras, the 8 Prakritis, and the several celestial rishis, having started into life, approached Brahman with the object of upholding the universe and its operations. Addressing the Grandsire, they said, "We have been created, O Holy One, by thee, O thou of great puissance. Tell each of us, O Grandsire, the respective jurisdiction we shall be vested with. What particular jurisdictions have been created by thee for supervising the different affairs? We, each, should be endued with what kind of consciousness and shall take charge of which of these? Do thou ordain also unto each of us the measure of strength that we are to have for discharging the duties of our respective jurisdictions." Thus addressed by them, the great God replied unto them in the following way. Brahman said, "You have done well, ye deities, in speaking to me of this matter. Blessed be you all. I was thinking of this very subject that has engaged your attention. How should the 3 worlds be upheld and kept going? How should your strength and mind be utilized towards that end? Let all of us, leaving this place, repair to that unmanifest and foremost of beings who is the witness of the world, for seeking his protection. He will tell us what is for our good." After this, those deities and rishis, with Brahman, proceeded to the northern shores of the ocean of milk, desirous of doing good to the 3 worlds. Arrived there, they began to practice those austere penances that are declared by Brahman in the Vedas. Those austerest of penances are known by the name of Mahaniyama, the foremost vows and observances. They stood there with mind fixed, immovable as posts of wood, and with eyes upturned and arms raised upwards. For 1,000 celestial years they were engaged in those severe penances. At the conclusion of that period they heard these sweet words in harmony with the Vedas and their branches. The Blessed and Holy One said, "Ye deities and rishis possessed of wealth of asceticism, with Brahman in your company, after according you all welcome, I say unto you these words. I know that is in your hearts. Verily, the thoughts that engage you are for the good of the 3 worlds. I shall increase your energy and strength investing the same with pravritti, predilection for acts. Ye gods, well have you undergone these penances from desire of adoring me. Ye foremost of beings, enjoy now the excellent fruits of austerities which ye have gone through. This Brahman is the Lord of all the worlds. Endued with puissance, he is the grandsire of all creatures. Ye also are foremost of deities. Do ye all, with concentrated minds, perform sacrifices for my glory. In the sacrifices which ye will perform, do ye always give me a portion of the sacrificial offerings. I shall then, ye Lord of creation, assign to each of you your respective jurisdictions and ordain what will be for your good." Vaisampayana continued, hearing these words of that God of gods, all those deities and great rishis and Brahman became filled with such delight that the hair on their bodies stood on its end. They forthwith made arrangements for a sacrifice in honor of Vishnu according to the ordinances laid down in the Vedas. In that sacrifice, Brahman himself dedicated a portion of the offerings to Vishnu. The deities and the celestial rishis also, after the manner of Brahman, dedicated similar portions each unto the great God. The portions, thus offered with great reverence unto Vishnu, were, in respect of both the measure and the quality of the articles used, according to the ordinances laid down from the Krita age. The deities and the rishis and Brahman, in that sacrifice, adored the great God as one endued with the complexion of the sun, as the foremost of beings, situate beyond the reach of dharmas, vast, pervading all things, the supreme Lord of all, the giver of boons, and possessed of puissance. Thus adored by them, the boon-giving and great God, invisible and bodiless, addressed those assembled celestials from heaven and said unto them, the offerings dedicated by you in this sacrifice have all reached me. I am gratified with all of you. I shall bestow rewards on you that will, however, be fraught with ends whence there will be return. 1846. This shall be your distinctive feature, ye gods, from this day, in consequence of my grace and kindness for you. Performing sacrifices in every yuga, with large presents, ye will become enjoyers of fruits born of poverty. Ye gods, those men also that will perform sacrifices according to the ordinances of the Vedas, will give unto all of you shares of their sacrificial offerings. In the Veda Sutras I make him the receiver, in such sacrifices, of a share similar to that which he has himself offered one in this sacrifice. Created to look after those affairs that appertain to your respective jurisdictions, do ye uphold the worlds according to the measures of your strength as dependent on the shares you receive on those sacrifices. Indeed, drawing strength from those rites and observances that will be current in the several worlds, taking their rise from the fruits of poverty, do ye continue to uphold the affairs of those worlds. 1847. Strengthened by the sacrifices that will be performed by men, ye will strengthen me. These are the thoughts that I entertain for you all. It is for this purpose that I have created the Vedas and sacrifices and plants and herbs. Duly served with these by human beings on earth, the deities will be gratified. Ye foremost of deities, till the end of this kalpa, I have ordained your creation, making your constitution depend upon the consequence of the religion of poverty. Ye foremost of beings, ye then, as regards your respective jurisdictions, engage yourselves in seeking the good of the three worlds. Marichi, Angiras, Atri, Pulastya, Pulaha, Kratu, and Vasishta, these 7 rishis have been created by a fiat of the will. These will become the foremost of persons conversant with the Vedas. In fact, they will become the preceptors of the Vedas. They will be wedded to the religion of poverty, for they have been intended to devote themselves to the act of procreating offspring. This is the eternal path that I disclose of creatures engaged in acts and observances. The puissant Lord who is charged with the creation of all the worlds is called Aniruddha, Sana, Sanat Sujata, Sanika, Sanandana, Sanat Kumara, Kapla, and Sanatana, numbering the 7th comma. These 7 rishis are known as the spiritual sons of Brahman. Their knowledge comes to them of itself, without being dependent on study or exertion. These 7 are wedded to the religion of Nivritti. They are the foremost of all persons conversant with yoga. They are possessed also of deep knowledge of the Sankhya philosophy. They are preceptors of the scriptures on duty, and it is they that introduce the duties of the religion of Nivritti and cause them to flow in the worlds. From unmanifest Prakriti has flowed consciousness and the 3 great attributes of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Transcending Prakriti is he called Kshrajna. That Kshrajna is myself. The path of those that are wedded to karma emerging out of Ahankara is fraught with return. One cannot, by that path, reach the spot whence there is no return. Different creatures have been created with different ends. Some are intended for the path of pravriti and some for that of nivritti. According to the path that a creature follows is the reward that he enjoys. This Brahman is the master of all the worlds. Endued with puissance, it is he that creates the universe. 1848. He is your mother and father, and he is your grandfather. At my command, he will be the giver of boons unto all creatures. His son Rudra, who has sprung from his brow at his command, will, endued with puissance, uphold all created beings. Go ye to your respective jurisdictions, and seek, according to the ordinances, the good of the worlds. Let all the scriptural acts flow in all the worlds. Let there be no delay in this. Ye foremost of celestials, do ye ordain the acts of all creatures and the ends that they are to attain therefore. Do ye appoint also the limits of the periods for which all creatures are to live. This present epoch that has been set to run is the foremost of all epochs and should be known by the name of Krita. In this yuga living creatures should not be slain in the sacrifices that may be performed. It should be as I ordain and let it not be otherwise. In this age, ye celestials, righteousness will flourish in its entirety. 1849, after this age will come the epoch called Treta. The Vedas, in that yuga, will lose 1/4. Only 3 of them will exist. In the sacrifice that will be performed in that age, animals, after dedication with the aid of sacred mantras, will be slain. As regards righteousness again, it will lose 1/4, only 3/4 thereof will flourish. On the expiration of the Treta will come the mixed yuga known by the name of Dwapara. In that yuga, righteousness will lose 2/4 and only 2/4 thereof will flourish. Upon the expiration of Dwapara the yuga that will set in will be called Kali Yuga, which will come under the influence of Tisya constellation. Righteousness will lose full 3/4. Only 1/4 thereof will exist in all places. When the great God said these words, the deities and the celestial rishis addressed him and said, if only a 1/4 part of righteousness is to exist in that age in every place, tell us, O Holy One, whither shall we then go and what shall we do? The Blessed and Holy One said, Ye foremost of celestials, ye should, in that age, repair to such places where the Vedas and sacrifices and penances and truth and self-restraint, accompanied by duties fraught with compassion for all creatures, will still continue to flourish. Sin will never be able to touch you at all. Vyasa continued, thus commanded by the great God, the deities with all the rishis bowed their heads unto him and then proceeded to the places they desired. After the rishis and denizens of heaven had left that place, Brahman remained there, desirous of beholding the great deity eminent in the form of Aniruddha. The foremost of deities then manifested himself to Brahmana, having assumed a form that had a vast equine head. Bearing a bowl, kamandu, and the triple stick, he manifested himself before Brahman, reciting the while the Vedas with all their branches. Beholding the great deity of immeasurable energy in that form crowned with an equine head, the puissant Brahman, the creator of all the worlds, moved by the desire of doing good to his creation, worshipped that boon-giving Lord with the bend of his head, and stood before him with hands joined in reverence. The great deity embraced Brahman and then told him these words. The Holy One said, Do thou, O Brahman, duly think of the courses of acts which creatures are to follow. Thou art the great ordainer of all created beings. Thou art the Master and the Lord of the universe. Placing this burthen on thee, I shall soon be free from anxiety. At such times, however, when it will be difficult for thee to accomplish the purposes of the deities, I shall then appear in incarnate forms according to my self-knowledge. Having said these words, that grand form with the equine head disappeared then and there. Having received his command, Brahman too proceeded quickly to his own region. It is for this, O Blessed One, that the eternal deity, with the lotus in his navel, became the acceptor of the first share offered in sacrifices, and hence it is that he came to be called as the eternal upholder of all sacrifices. He himself adopted the religion of nivritti, the end after which those creatures strive that are desirous of indestructible fruits. He ordained at the same time the religion of pravritti for others, with a view to giving variety to the universe. He is the beginning, he is the middle, and he is the end of all created beings. He is the creator and he is the one object of meditation. He is the actor and he is the act. Having withdrawn the universe into himself at the end of the Yuga, he goes to sleep, and awakening at the commencement of another Yuga, he once more creates the universe. Do you all bow unto that illustrious one who is possessed of high soul and who transcends the three attributes, who is unborn, whose form is the universe, and who is the abode or refuge of all the denizens of heaven? Do you bow unto him who is the supreme Lord of all creatures, who is the Lord of the Adityas, and of the Vasas as well? Do you bow unto him who is the Lord of the Aswins, and the Lord of the Maruts, who is the Lord of all the sacrifices ordained in the Vedas, and the Lord of the Vedangas? Bow unto him who always resides in the ocean, and who is called Hari, and whose hair is like the blades of the manja grass. Bow unto him who is peace and tranquility, and who imparts the religion of moksha unto all creatures. Bow unto him who is the Lord of penances, of all kinds of energy, and of fame, who is ever the Lord of speech and the Lord of all the rivers also. Bow unto him who is called Kapadin, Rudra, who is the great boar, who is unicorn, and who is possessed of great intelligence, who is the sun, who assumed the well-known form with the equine head, and who is always displayed in a fourfold form. Bow unto him who is unrevealed, who is capable of being apprehended by knowledge only, who is both indestructible and destructible. The Supreme Deity, who is immutable, pervadeth all things. He is the Supreme Lord who can be known with the aid of the eye of knowledge alone. It was thus that, aided by the eye of knowledge, I beheld in days of yore that foremost of deities. Asked by you, I have told you everything in detail, ye disciples, and do you act according to my words and dutifully serve the Supreme Lord called Hari? Do you hymn his praises in Vedic words and adore and worship him also according to due rites? Vaisampayana continued, it was thus that the arranger of the Vedas, endued with great intelligence, discoursed to us, questioned by us on that occasion. His son, the highly righteous Sukha, and all his disciples, viz., ourselves, listened to him while he delivered the discourse. Our preceptor, with ourselves, O king, then adored the great deity with riches extracted from the four Vedas. I have thus told thee everything about what thou hadst asked me. It was thus, O king, that our island-born preceptor discoursed to us. He who, having uttered the words, I bow unto the Holy Lord, frequently listens, with concentrated attention, to this discourse or reads or recites it to others, becomes endued with intelligence and health, and possessed of beauty and strength. If ill, he becomes freed from that illness, bound, freed from his bonds. The man who cherishes desires obtains, by this, the fruition of all his desires, and easily attains to a long life also. A Brahmana, by doing this, becomes conversant with all the Vedas, and a Kshatriya becomes crowned with success. A Vaisya, by doing it, makes considerable profits, and a Sudra attains to great felicity. A sonless man obtains a son. A maiden obtains a desirable husband. A woman that has conceived brings forth a son. A barren woman conceives and attains the wealth of sons and grandsons. He who recites this discourse on the way succeeds in passing happily and without impediments of any kind along his way. In fact, one attains to whatever objects one cherishes, if one reads or recites this narrative. Hearing these words of the great Rishi, fraught with certainty of conclusion, and embodying a recital of the attributes of that high-souled one who is the foremost of all beings, hearing this narrative of the great conclave of rishis and other denizens of heaven, men who are devoted to the Supreme Deity, derive great happiness. Section Xi. Janamjaya said, O Holy One, it behoveth thee to tell me the significance of those diverse names uttering which the great Rishi Vyasa with his disciples hymned the praises of the illustrious slayer of Madhu. I am desirous of hearing those names of Hari, that Supreme Lord of all creatures. Indeed, by listening to those names, I shall be sanctified and cleansed even like the bright autumnal moon. Vaisampayana said, Listen, O king, to what the significances are of the diverse names, due to attributes and acts, of Hari, as the puissant Hari himself of cheerful soul explained them to Fulgana. That slayer of hostile heroes, viz. Fulgana, had at one time asked Kusava, inquiring after the imports of the sum of the names by which the high Sulkeshva is adored. Arjuna said, O Holy One, O Supreme Ordainer of the past and the future, O Creator of all beings, O Immutable One, O Refuge of all the worlds, O Lord of the universe, O Dispeller of the fears of all persons, I desire to hear from thee in detail, O Kusava, the significance of all those names of thine, O God, which have been mentioned by the great Rishis in the Vedas and the Puranas in consequences of diverse acts of thine. None else than thee, O Lord, is competent to explain the significations of those names. The Holy One said, in the Rigveda, in the Ajurveda, in the Atharvans and the Samans, in the Puranas and the Upanishads, as also in the treatises on astrology, O Arjuna, in the Sankhya scriptures, in the Yoga scriptures, and in the treatises also on the science of life, many are the names that have been mentioned by the great Rishis. Some of those names are derivable from my attributes and some of them relate to my acts. Do thou hear, with concentrated attention, O sinless one, what the import is of each of those names, in particular, that have reference to my acts. I shall recite them to you. It is said that in days of yore you were half my body. Salutations unto him of great glory, him, viz., that is the supreme soul of all embodied creatures. 1850. Salutations unto Narayana, unto him that is identifiable with the universe, unto him that transcends the three primal attributes of Sattva, Rajas and Minas, unto him that is, again, the soul of those attributes. From his grace hath arisen Brahman, and from his wrath hath arisen Rudra. He is the source whence have sprung all mobile and immobile creatures. O foremost of all persons endued with Sattva, the attribute of Sattva consists of the 8 and 10 qualities. 1851. That attribute is supreme nature, having for her soul the sky and earth, and succeeding by her creative forces in upholding the universe. That nature is identical with the fruit of all acts, in the form of the diverse regions of felicity to which creatures attain through their acts. She is also the pure Chit. She is immortal and invincible, and is called the soul of the universe. From her flows all the modifications of both creation and destruction. She is identical with my Prakriti or nature. Divested of sex, she or he is the penances that people undergo. He is both the sacrifice that is performed and the sacrificer that performs the sacrifice. He is the ancient and the infinite Purusha. He is otherwise called Aniruddha and is the source of the creation and the destruction of the universe. When Brahma's night wore off, through the grace of that being of immeasurable energy, a lotus made its appearance first, O thou of eyes like lotus petals. Within that lotus was born Brahma, springing from Aniruddha's grace. Towards the evening of Brahma's day, Aniruddha became filled with wrath, and as a consequence of this, there sprang from his forehead a son called Rudra, vested with the power of destroying everything when the hour for destruction comes. These two, viz., Brahma and Rudra, are the foremost of all the deities, having sprung respectively from the propitiousness and the wrath of Aniruddha. Acting according to Aniruddha's direction, these two deities create and destroy. Although capable of granting boons unto all creatures, they are, however, in the matter of the concerns to which they attend, viz., creation and destruction, merely instruments in the hands of Aniruddha. It is Aniruddha that does everything, making Brahma and Rudra the visible agents in respect of the universe. Rudra is otherwise called Kapardin. He has matted locks on his head, and sometimes displays a head that is bald. He loves to dwell in the midst of crematoriums which constitute his home. He is an observer of the ostrich vows, He is yogin of mighty puissance and energy. He is the destroyer of Daksha's sacrifice and the tearer of Bhaga's eyes. O son of Pandu, Rudra should be known to have always Narayana for his soul. If that deity of deities, viz. Mahabharata, be worshipped, then O Patha, is the puissant Narayana also worshipped. I am the soul, O son of Pandu, of all the worlds, of all the universe. Rudra, again, is my soul. It is for this that I always adore him. If I do not adore the auspicious and boon-giving Isana, nobody would then adore my own self. The ordinances I set are followed by all the worlds. Those ordinances should always be adored, and it is, therefore, that I adore them. He who knows Rudra knows myself, and he who knows myself knows Rudra. He who follows Rudra follows me. Rudra is Narayana. Both are one, and one is displayed in two different forms. Rudra and Narayana, forming one person, pervade all displayed things and cause them to act. No one else than Rudra is competent to grant me a boon, O son of Pandu. Having settled this in my mind, I adored in days of yore the ancient and puissant Rudra, for obtaining the boon of a son. In adoring Rudra thus I adored my own self. Vishnu never bows his head unto any deity except his own self. It is for this reason that I adore Rudra, Rudra being, as I have already told thee, my own self. All the deities, including Brahma and Indra and the deities and the great rishis, adore Narayana, that foremost of deities, otherwise called by the name of Hari. Vishnu is the foremost of all beings past, present, or future, and as such should always be adored and worshipped with reverence. Do thou bow thy head unto Vishnu. Do thou bow thy head unto him who gives protection to all. Do thou bow, O son of Kunti, unto that great boon-giving deity, that foremost of deities, who eats the offerings made unto him and sacrifices. I have heard that there are 4 kinds of worshippers, viz., those who are eager for a religious life, those who are inquirers, those who strive to comprehend what they learn, and those who are wise. Among them all, they that are devoted to realizing the self and do not adore any other deity, are the foremost. I am the end they seek, and though engaged in acts, they never seek the fruits thereof. The 3 remaining classes of my worshippers are those that are desirous of the fruits of their acts. They attain to regions of great felicity, but then they have to fall down therefrom upon the exhaustion of their merits. Those amongst my worshippers, therefore, that are fully awakened, and, as such, that know that all happiness is terminable except what is attainable by persons that become identified with me, obtain what is foremost and invaluable. 1852. Those that are awakened and whose conduct displays such enlightenment may be engaged in adoring Brahman or Mahadeva or the others deities that occur in heaven, but they succeed at least in attaining to myself. I have thus told thee, O Patha, what the distinctions are between my worshippers. Thyself, O son of Kunti, and myself are known as Nara and Narayana. Both of us have assumed human bodies only for the purpose of lightening the burden of the earth. I am fully cognizant of self-knowledge. I know who I am and whence I am, O Bharata. I know the religion of Nivritti and all that contributes to the prosperity of creatures. Eternal as I am the one sole refuge of all men. The waters have been called by the name of Nara, for they sprang from him called Nara. And since the waters in former times were my refuge, I am, therefore, called by the name of Narayana. Assuming the form of the sun, I cover the universe with my rays. And because I am the home of all creatures, therefore, am I called by the name of Vasudeva. I am the end of all creatures and their sire, O Bharata. I pervade the entire firmament on high and the earth, O Patha, and my splendor transcends every other splendor. I am he, O Bharata, whom all creatures wished to attain to at the time of death. and because I pervade all the universe, I have come to be called by the name of Vishnu. Desirous of attaining to success through restraint of their senses, people seek to attain to me who am heaven and earth and the firmament between the two. For this am I called by the name of Damodara. The word Prani includes food, the Vedas, water, and nectar. These four are always in my stomach. Hence am I called by the name of Pranagarbha. The rishis have said that once on a time when the rishi Trita was thrown into a well by Kata and Dwiti, the distressed Trita invoked me, saying, O Pranagarbha, do thou rescue the fallen Trita. That foremost of rishis, viz. Trita, the spiritual son of Brahma, having called on me thus, was rescued from the pit. The rays that emanate from the sun who gives heat to the world, from the blazing fire, and from the moon, constitute my hair. Hence do foremost of learned Brahmanas call me by the name of Kesava. The high Suljatathaya having impregnated his wife disappeared from her side through an illusion of the gods. The younger brother Vrihaspati then appeared before that high Suld one's wife, and to that foremost of rishis that had repaired thither from desire of congress, the child in the womb of Utathaya's wife, O son of Kunti, whose body had already been formed of the 5 primal elements, said, O giver of boons, I have already entered into this womb. It behoveth thee not to assail my mother. Hearing these words of the unborn child, Vrihaspati became filled with wrath and denounced a curse on him, saying, Since thou obstructest me in this way when I have come hither from desire of the pleasures of congress, therefore shalt thou, by my curse, be visited by blindness, without doubt. Through this curse of that foremost of rishis, the child of Utathaya was born blind, and blind he remained for a long time. It was for this reason that the rishi, in days of yore, came to be known by the name of Durgadamas. He, however, acquired the 4 Vedas with their eternal limbs and subsidiary parts. After that he frequently invoked me by this secret name of mine. Indeed, according to the ordinance as laid down, he repeatedly called upon me by the name of Kesava. Through the merit he acquired by uttering this name repeatedly, he became cured of his blindness and then came to be called by the name of Gautama. This name of mine, therefore, O Arjuna, is productive of boons unto them that utter it among all the deities and the high Suldrishis. The deity of fire, appetite, and Shoma, food, combining together, become transfused into one and the same substance. It is for this reason that the entire universe of mobile and immobile creatures is said to be pervaded by those 2 deities. 1853. In the Puranas, Agni and Soma are spoken of as complementary to one another. The deities also are said to have Agni for their mouth. It is in consequence of these 2 beings endued with natures leading to the unification that they are said to be deserving of each other and upholders of the universe. Section Xli. Arjuna said, How did Agni and Soma, in days of yore, attain to uniformity in respect of their original nature? This doubt has arisen in my mind. Do thou dispel it, O slayer of Madhu. The highly and holy one said, I shall recite to thee, O son of Pandu, an ancient story of instance originating from my own energy. Do thou listen to it with rapt attention. When 4,000 yugas according to the measure of the celestials elapse, the dissolution of the universe comes. The manifest disappears into the unmanifest. All creatures, mobile and immobile, meet with destruction. Light, earth, wind, all disappear. Darkness spreads over the universe, which becomes one infinite expanse of water. When that infinite waste of water only exists like Brahma without second, it is neither day nor night. Neither aught nor naught exists, neither manifest nor unmanifest. Then only undifferentiated Brahman existed. When such is the condition of the universe, the foremost of beings, viz., springs from Dharmas, the eternal and immutable Hari that is the combination of the attributes, of omnipotence, and the rest, belonging to Narayana, that is indestructible and immortal, that is without senses, that is inconceivable and unborn, that is truth's self-wrought with compassion, that is endued with the form of existence which the rays of the gem called Chintamani have, that causes diverse kinds of inclinations to flow in diverse directions, that is divested of the principles of hostility and deterioration and mortality and decay, that is formless and all-pervading, and that is endued with the principle of universal creation and of eternity without beginning, middle, or end. There is authority for this assertion. The Shruti declares, day was not, night was not, aught was not, naught was not. In the beginning there was only Tamas, 1854, in the form of the universe, and she is the night of Narayana of universal form. Even this is the meaning of the word Dhammas. From that Purusha, called Hari, the spawn of Tamas and having Brahman for his parent, started into existence the being called Brahman. Brahman, desiring to create creatures, caused Agni and Shoma to spring from his own eyes. Afterwards, when creatures came to be created, the created persons came out in their due order as Brahmanas and Kshatriyas. He who started into life as Shoma was none else than Brahma, and they that were born as Brahmanas were all Shoma in reality. He who started into being as Kshatriyas were none else than Agni. The Brahmanas became endued with greater energy than the Kshatriyas. If you ask the reason why, the answer is that this superiority of the Brahmanas to the Kshatriyas is an attribute that is manifest to the whole world. It occurred as follows. The Brahmanas represent the eldest creation as regards men. None were created before that was superior to the Brahmanas. He who offers food into the mouth of a Brahmana is regarded as pouring libations into a blazing fire, for gratifying the deities. I say that having ordained things in comprising this way, the creation of the creatures was accomplished by Brahma. Having established all created beings in their respective positions, he upholds the three worlds. There occurs a declaration to the same effect in the mantras of the Shrutis. Thou, O Agni, art the hotary in sacrifices, and the benefactor of the universe. Thou art the benefactor of the deities, of men, and of all the worlds. There is other authority also for this. Thou art, O Agni, the hotary of the universe and of sacrifices. Thou art the source through which the deities and men do good to the universe. Agni is truly the hotary and the performer of sacrifices. Agni is again the Brahma of the sacrifice. No libations can be poured into sacrificial fire without uttering mantras. There can be no penances without a person to perform them. The worship of the deities and men and the rishis is accomplished by the libations poured with mantras. Hence, O Agni, thou hast been regarded as the hotary in sacrifices. 1855. Thou art, again, all the other mantras that have been declared in respect of the Homer rites of men. For the Brahmanas the duty is ordained of officiating for others in the sacrifices they perform. The two other orders, viz., Kshatriyas and Vaisyas, that are included within the regenerate or twice-born class, have not the same duty prescribed for them. Hence, Brahmanas are like Agni, who uphold sacrifices. The sacrifices, which the Brahmanas perform, strengthen the deities. Strengthened in this way, the deities fructify the earth, and thereby support all living creatures. But the result that may be achieved by the foremost of sacrifices may as well be accomplished through the mouth of the Brahmanas. That learned person who offers food into the mouth of a Brahmana is said to pour libations into the sacred fire for gratifying the deities. In this way the Brahmanas have come to be regarded as Agni. They that are possessed of learning adore Agni. Agni is again Vishnu. Entering all creatures, he upholds their life breaths. In this connection there is a verse sung by Sanat Kumara. Brahman, in creating the universe, first created the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas become immortal by studying the Vedas, and repair to heaven through the aid of such study. The intelligence, speech, acts and observances, faith, and the penances of the Brahmanas uphold both the earth and the heaven like slings of strings upholding bovine nectar. 1856. There is no duty higher than truth. There is no superior more worthy of reverence than the mother. There is none more efficient than the Brahmana for conferring felicity both here and hereafter. The inhabitants of those realms where Brahmanas have no certain means of support, from lands or other kinds of property assigned to them, become very miserable. There the oxen do not carry the people or draw the plough, nor do vehicles of any kind bear them. The milk kept in jars is never churned for yielding butter. On the other hand, the residents become divested of prosperity of every kind, and betake themselves to the ways of robbers, instead of being able to enjoy the blessings of peace. 1857. In the Vedas, the Puranas, the histories, and other authoritative writings, it is said that Brahmanas, who are the souls of all creatures, who are the creators of all things, and who are identifiable with all existent objects, sprang from the mouth of Narayana. Indeed, it is said that the Brahmanas first came at the time when the great boon-giving god had restrained his speech as a penance, and the other orders have originated from the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas are distinguished above the deities and asuras, since they were created by myself in my indescribable form as Brahma. As I have created the deities and the asuras and the great rishis, so I have placed the Brahmanas in their respective situations and have to punish them occasionally. In consequence of his licentious assault on Nahalya, Indra was cursed by Kodama, her husband, through which Indra got a green beard on his face. Through that curse of Kausika, Indra lost also his own testicles, which loss was afterwards, through the kindness of the other deities, made up by the substitution of the testicles of a ram. When in the sacrifice of King Satyavati, the great Rishi Kayavana became desirous of making the twin winds sharers of the sacrificial offerings, Indra objected. Upon Kayavana insisting, Indra sought to hurl his thunderbolt at him. The Rishi paralyzed Indra's arms. Incensed at the destruction of his sacrifice by Rudra, Daksha once more set himself to the practice of severe austerities, and attaining to high puissance caused something like a third eye to appear on the forehead of Rudra for the destruction of Tripurasura. 1858. When Rudra addressed himself for the destruction of the triple city belonging to the Asuras, the preceptor of the Asuras, viz. Usanas, provoked beyond endurance, tore a matted lock from his own head and hurled it at Rudra. From that matted lock of Usanas sprang many serpents. Those serpents began to bite Rudra, at which his throat became blue. During a bygone period, viz. that connected with the self-born Manu, 1859, it is said that Narayana had seized Rudra by the throat, and hence did Rudra's throat become blue. On the occasion of churning the ocean for raising the Amrita, Vrihaspati of Angira's race sat on the shores of the ocean for performing the rite of Purushkarana. When he took up a little water for the purpose of the initial akamana, the water seemed to him to be very muddy. At this Vrihaspati became angry and cursed the ocean, saying, "Since thou continuest to be so dirty regardless of the fact of my having come to thee for touching thee, since thou hast not become clear and transparent, therefore from this day thou shalt be tainted with fishes and sharks and tortoises and other aquatic animals." From that time, the waters of the ocean have become infested with diverse kinds of sea animals and monsters. Viswarupa, the son of Tashtri, formerly became the priest of the deities. He was, on his mother's side, related to the Asuras, for his mother was the daughter of an Asura. While publicly offering unto the deities their shares of sacrificial offerings, he privately offered shares thereof unto the Asuras. The Asuras, with their chief Hiranyakasipu at the head, then repaired to the sister, the mother of Viswarupa, and solicited a boon from her, saying, the son Viswarupa by Tashtri, otherwise called Trisiras, is now the priest of the deities, while he gives unto the deities their shares of sacrificial offerings publicly, he gives us our shares of the same privately. In consequence of this, the deities are being aggrandized, and we are being weakened. It behoveth thee, therefore, to prevail upon him that he may take up our cause. Thus addressed by them, the mother of Viswarupa repaired to her son who was then staying in the Nandana woods of Indra, and said unto him, How is it, O son, that thou art engaged in aggrandizing the cause of thy foes and weakening that of thy maternal uncles? It behoveth thee not to act in this way. Viswarupa, thus solicited by his mother, thought that he should not disobey her words, and as the consequence of that reflection he went over to the side of Hiranyakasipu, after having paid proper respects to his mother. King Hiranyakasipu, upon the arrival of Trisiras, dismissed his old hotri, viz. Vasishta, the son of Brahma, and appointed Trisiras to that office. Incensed at this, Vasishta cursed Hiranyakasipu, saying, Since thou dismissest me and appointest another person as thy hotri, this sacrifice of thine shall not be completed, and some being the like of whom has not existed before will slay thee! In consequence of this curse, Hiranyakasipu was slain by Vishnu in the form of a man-lion. Viswarupa, having adopted the side of his maternal relations, employed himself in severe austerities for aggrandizing them. Impelled by the desire of causing him to swerve from his vows, Indra dispatched to him many beautiful apsaras. Beholding those celestial nymphs of transcendent beauty, the heart of Viswarupa became agitated. Within a very short time he became exceedingly attached to them. Understanding that he had become attached to them, the celestial nymphs said unto him one day, We shall not tarry here any longer. In fact, we shall return to that place whence we came. And to them that said so, the son of Tashtri replied, Where will you go? Stay with me. I shall do you good. Hearing him say so, the apsaras rejoined, We are celestial nymphs called apsaras. We chose in days of old the illustrious and boon-giving Indra of great puissance. Viswarupa then said unto them, This very day I shall so ordain that all the deities with Indra at the head shall cease to be. Saying this, Trisiras began to recite mentally certain sacred mantras of great efficacy. By virtue of those mantras he began to increase in energy. With one of his mouths he began to drink all the soma that brahmanas engaged in sacrifices poured on their sacred fires with due rites. With the second mouth he began to eat all food that was offered in sacrifices. With his third mouth he began to drink up the energy of all the deities with Indra at their head. Beholding him swelling with energy in every part of his body that was strengthened by the soma he was drinking, all the deities, then, with Indra in their company, proceeded to the grandsire Brahma. Arrived at his presence, they addressed him and said, All the soma that is duly offered in the sacrifices performed everywhere is being drunk by Viswarupa. We no longer obtain our shares. The asuras are being aggrandized, while we are being weakened. It behoveth thee, therefore, to ordain what is for our good. After the deities ceased, the grandsire replied, The great Rishi Dadichi of Bhrigu's race is now engaged in performing severe austerities. Go, ye deities, unto him and solicit a boon from him. Ye so arrange that he may cast off his body. With his bones let a new weapon be created called the thunderbolt. Thus instructed by the grandsire, the deities proceeded to that place where the holy Rishi Dadichi was engaged in his austerities. The deities with Indra at the head addressed the sage, saying, O Holy One, your austerities, we hope, are being well performed and uninterrupted. Unto them the sage Dadichi said, Welcome to all of you. Tell me what I should do for you. I shall certainly do what you will say. They then told him, It behoveth thee to cast off thy body for benefiting all the worlds. Thus solicited, the sage Didichi, who was a great yogin and who regarded happiness and misery in the same light, without being at all jealous, concentrated his soul by his yoga power and cast off his body. When his soul left its temporary tenement of clay, Datri, taking his bones, created an irresistible weapon called the thunderbolt. With a thunderbolt thus made with the bones of a Brahmana, which was impenetrable by other weapons and irresistible and pervaded by the energy of Vishnu, Indra struck Viswarupa, the son of Tashtri. Having slain the son of Tashtri thus, Indra severed his head from the body. From the lifeless body, however, of Viswarupa, when it was pressed, the energy that was still residing in it gave birth to a mighty Asura of the name of Vritra. Vritra became the foe of Indra, but Indra slew him also with the thunderbolt. In consequence of the sin of Brahmanicide, being thus doubled, Indra became overcome with a great fear, and as the consequence thereof he had to abandon the sovereignty of heaven. He entered a cool lotus stalk that grew in the Mana's lake. In consequence of the yoga attribute of anima, he became very minute and entered the fibers of that lotus stalk. 1860, when the Lord of the Three Worlds, the husband of Sakhi, had thus disappeared from sight through fear of the sin of Brahmanicide, the universe became lordless. The attributes of Rajas and Tamas assailed the deities. The mantras uttered by the great rishis lost all efficacy. Rakshasas appeared everywhere. The Vedas were about to disappear. The inhabitants of all the worlds, being destitute of a king, lost their strength and began to fall an easy prey to Rakshasas and other evil beings. Then the deities and the rishis, uniting together, made Nuasha, the son of Ayasha, the king of the three worlds, and duly crowned him as such. Nuasha had on his forehead full 500 luminaries of blazing effulgence, which had the virtue of despoiling every creature of energy. Thus equipped, Nuasha continued to rule heaven. The three worlds were restored to their normal condition. The inhabitants of the universe once more became happy and cheerful. Nuasha then said, Everything that Indra used to enjoy is before me. Only his spouse Sakhi is not by. Having said this, Nuasha proceeded to where Sakhi was and, addressing her, said, O blessed lady, I have become the lord of the deities. Do thou accept me? And to him Sakhi replied, saying, Thou art, by nature, wedded to righteousness of behavior. Thou belongest, again, to the race of Shoma. It behoveth thee not to assail another person's wife. Nuasha, thus addressed by her, said, The position of Indra is now being occupied by me. I deserve to enjoy the dominions and all the precious possessions of Indra. In desiring to enjoy thee there can be no sin. Thou wert Indra's and therefore should be mine. Sakhi then said unto him, I am observing the vow that has not yet been completed. After performing the final ablutions I shall come to thee within a few days. Extracting this promise from Indra's spouse, Nuasha left her presence. Meanwhile Sakhi, afflicted with pain and grief, anxious to find her lord and assailed by her fear of Nuasha, proceeded to Vrihaspati, the chief priest of the celestials. At the first sight Vrihaspati understood her to be struck with anxiety. He immediately had recourse to yoga meditation and learnt that she was intent upon doing what was necessary for restoring her husband to his true position. Vrihaspati then addressed her, saying, Equipped with penances and the merit that will be thine in consequence of this vow that thou art observing, do thou invoke the boon-giving goddess Apasruti. Invoked by thee, she will appear and show thee where thy husband is dwelling. While in the observance of that very austere vow, she invoked with the aid of proper mantras the boon-giving goddess Apasruti. Invoked by Sakhi, the goddess presented herself before her and said, I am here at thy bidding. invoked by thee I have come. What cherished wish of thine shall I accomplish? Bowing unto her with a bend of the head, Saki said, O blessed lady, it behoveth thee to show me where my husband is. Thou art truth. Thou art traitor. Thus addressed, the goddess Sapasruti took her to the lake Manasa. Arrived there, she pointed out to Saki her lord Indra residing within the fibers of a lotus stalk. Beholding his spouse pale and emaciated, Indra became exceedingly anxious. And the Lord of heaven said unto himself, Alas, great is the sorrow that has overtaken me. I have fallen off from the position that is mine. This my spouse, afflicted with grief on my account, finds out my lost self and comes to me here. Having reflected in this strain, Indra addressed his dear spouse and said, In what condition art thou now? She answered him, Nuashur invites me to make me his wife. I have obtained a respite from him, having fixed the time when I am to go to him. And to her Indra then said, Go and say unto Nuashur that he should come to thee on a vehicle never used before, viz., one unto which some rishis should be harnessed, and arriving at thine in that state he should wed thee. Indra has many kinds of vehicles that are all beautiful and charming. All these have borne thee. Nuashur, however, should come on such a vehicle that Indra himself had not possessed. Thus counselled by her lord, Saki left that spot with a joyous heart. Indra also once more entered the fibers of that lotus stalk. Beholding the queen of Indra come back to heaven, Nuashur addressed her saying, The time thou hast fixed is over. And to him Saki said what Indra had directed her to say. Harnessing a number of great rishis unto the vehicle he rode, Nuashur set out from his place for coming to where Saki was living. The foremost of rishis, viz., Agastya, born within a jar of the vital seed of Maitrevarana, beheld those foremost of rishis insulted by Nuashur in that way. Him Nuashur struck with his foot. Unto him, Agastya said, Wretch, as thou hast betaken thyself to a highly improper act, do thou fall down on the earth. Be transformed into a snake, and do thou continue to live in that form as long as the earth and her hills continue. As soon as these words were uttered by the great rishi, Nuashur fell down from that vehicle. The three worlds once more became masterless. The deities and the rishis then united together and proceeded to where Vishnu was and appealed to him for bringing about the restoration of Indra. Approaching him, they said, O Holy One, it behoveth thee to rescue Indra, who is overwhelmed by the sin of Brahmanacide. The boon-giving Vishnu replied unto them, saying, Let Sakra perform a horse sacrifice in honor of Vishnu. He will then be restored to his former position. The deities and the rishis began to search for Indra, but when they could not find him, they went to Saki and said unto her, O blessed lady, go unto Indra and bring him here. Requested by them, Saki once more proceeded to the lake Manasa. Indra, rising from the lake, came to Vrihaspati. The celestial priest Vrihaspati then made arrangements for a great horse sacrifice, substituting a black antelope for a good steed every way fit to be offered up in sacrifice. Causing Indra, the lord of the Maruts, to ride upon that very steed, which was saved from slaughter, Vrihaspati led him to his own place. The Lord of Heaven was then adored with hymns by all the deities and the rishis. He continued to rule in heaven, cleansed of the sin of Brahmanacide, which was divided into 4 portions and ordained to reside in woman, fire, trees, and kine. It was thus that Indra, strengthened by the energy of a Brahmana, succeeded in slaying his foe, and when, as the result of that act of his, he had been overpowered by sin, it was the energy of another Brahmana that rescued him. It was thus that Indra once more regained his position. In days of yore, while the great Rishi Bharadwaj was saying his prayers by the side of the celestial Ganga, one of the 3 feet of Vishnu, when he assumed his 3-footed form, reached that spot. 1861, beholding that strange sight, Bharadwaja assailed Vishnu with a handful of water, upon which Vishnu's bosom received a mark, called Srivatsa. 1862. Cursed by that foremost of rishis, viz. Bhrigu, Agni was obliged to become a devourer of all things. Once on a time, Aditi, the mother of the deities, cooked some food for her sons. She thought that, eating that food and strengthened by it, the deities would succeed in slaying the Asuras. After the food had been cooked, Vata, the presiding deity of the luminary known by that name, having completed the observance of an austere vow, presented himself before Aditi and said unto her, "Give me alms." Aditi, through thus solicited for food, gave him none, thinking that no one should eat of the food she had cooked before her sons. The deities had first taken it. Incensed at the conduct of Aditi, who thus refused to give him alms, Vata, who was Brahma's self through the austere vow he had completed, cursed her, saying that as Aditi had refused him alms, she would have a pain in her womb when Vivaswat, in his second birth in the womb of Aditi, would be born in the form of an egg. Aditi reminded Vivaswat at that time of the curse of Vata, and it is for that reason that Vivaswat, the deity who is adorned in Saradas, coming out of the womb of Aditi, came to be called by the name of Martanda. The Prajapati Daksha became the father of 60 daughters. Amongst them, 3 and 10 were bestowed by him upon Kasyapa, 10 upon Dharma, 10 upon Manu, and 7 and 20 upon Shoma. Although all the 7 and 20 that were called nakshatras and bestowed upon Shoma were equal in respect of beauty and accomplishments, yet Shoma became more attached to one, viz., Rohini, than the rest. The rest of his spouses, filled with jealousy, leaving him, repaired to the sire and informed him of this conduct of their husband, saying, "O Holy One, although all of us are equal in point of beauty, yet our husband Shoma is exclusively attached to our sister Rohini." Incensed at this representation of his daughters, the celestial Rishi Daksha cursed Shoma, saying that henceforth the disease phthisis should assail his son-in-law and dwell in him. Through this curse of Daksha, phthisis assailed the puissant Shoma and entered into his body. Assailed by phthisis in this way, Shoma came to Daksha. The latter addressed him, saying, "I have cursed thee because of thy unequal behavior towards thy wives." The rishi then said unto Shoma, "Thou art being reduced by the disease phthisis that has assailed thee. There is a sacred water called Hiranyasara in the western ocean. Repairing to that sacred water, do thou bathe the counselled by the rishi." Shoma proceeded thither. Arrived at Hiranyasara, Soma bathed in that sacred water. Performing his oblations, he cleansed himself from his sin. And because that sacred water was illumined, Abhasita, by Shoma, therefore was it from that day called by the name of Prabhasa. In consequence, however, of the curse denounced upon him in days of old by Daksha, Shoma, to this day, begins to wane from the night of the full moon till his total disappearance on the night of the new moon, whence he once more begins to wax till the night of full moon. The brightness also of the lunar disk from that time received a stain, for the body of Shoma, since then, has come to present certain dark spots. In fact, the splendid disk of the moon has, from that day, come to exhibit the mark of a hair. Once on a time, a rishi of the name of Stilasiras was engaged in practicing very severe austerities on the northern breasts of the mountains of Meru. While engaged in those austerities, a breeze, charged with all kinds of delicious perfumes, began to blow and fan his body. Scorched as his body was by the very severe austerities he was undergoing, and living as he did upon air alone to the exclusion of every kind of food, he became highly gratified in consequence of that delicious breeze which blew around him. While he was thus gratified with the delicious breeze that fanned him, the trees around him, moved by jealousy, put forth their flowers for making a display and extorting his praise. Displeased at this conduct of the trees, because it was dictated by jealousy, the rishi cursed them, saying, henceforth, ye shall not be able to put forth your flowers at all times. In days of yore, for doing good to the world, Narayana took birth as the great Rishi Vadavamika. While engaged in practicing severe austerities on the breast of Meru, he summoned the ocean to his presence. The ocean, however, disobeyed his summons. Incensed at this, the Rishi, with the heat of his body, caused the waters of the ocean to become as saltish in taste as the human sweat. The Rishi further said, Thy waters shall henceforth cease to be drinkable. Only when the equine head, roving within thee, will drink thy waters, they will be as sweet as honey. It is for this curse that the waters of the ocean to this day are saltish to the taste and are drunk by no one else than the equine head. 1863, the daughter, named of the Himavat mountains, was desired by Rudra in marriage. After Himavat had promised the hand of Amata Mahadeva, the great Rishi Bhrigu, approaching Himavat, addressed him, saying, Give this daughter of thine unto me in marriage. Himavat replied unto him, saying, Rudra is the bridegroom already selected by me for my daughter. Angry at this reply, Bhrigu said, Since thou refusest my suit for the hand of thy daughter and insultest me thus, thou shalt no longer abound with jewels and gems. To this day, in consequence of the Rishi's words, the mountains of Himavat have not any jewels and gems. Even such is the glory of the Brahmanas. It is through the favour of the Brahmanas that the Kshatriyas are able to possess the eternal and undeteriorating earth as their wife and enjoy her. The power of the Brahmanas, again, is made up of Agni and Shoma. The universe is upheld by that power and, therefore, is upheld by Agni and Shoma united together. It is said that Surya and Chandramas are the eyes of Narayana. The rays of Surya constitute my eyes. Each of them, viz., the sun and the moon, invigorate and warm the universe respectively. And because of the sun and the moon thus swarming and invigorating the universe, they have come to be regarded as the heart or joy of the universe. It is in consequence of these acts of Agni and Shoma that uphold the universe that I have come to be called by the name of Rishikasa, O son of Pandu. Indeed, I am the boon-giving Isana, the creator of the universe. 1864. Through virtue of the mantras with which libations of clarified butter are poured on the sacred fire, I take and appropriate their principal share of the offerings made in sacrifices. My complexion also is of that foremost of gems called Harit. It is for these reasons that I am called by the name of Hari. I am the highest abode of all creatures and am regarded by persons conversant with the scriptures to be identical with truth or nectar. I am, for this reason, called by learned Brahmanas by the name of right Dharma, abode of truth or nectar. When in days of yore the earth became submerged in the waters and lost to the view, I found her out and raised her from the depths of the ocean. For this reason the deities adore me by the name of Govinda. Sipavishta is another name of mine. The word Sipi indicates a person that has no hair on his body. He who pervades all things in the form of Sipi is known by the name of Sipavishta. The Rishi Yaksha, with tranquil soul, in many a sacrifice invoked me by the name Sipavishta. It is for this reason that I came to bear this secret name. Yaksha of great intelligence, having adored me by the name Sipavishta, succeeded in restoring the Nairaktas which had disappeared from the surface of the earth and sunk into nether regions. I was never born. I never take birth. Nor shall I ever be born. I am the Kshajna of all creatures. Hence am I called by the name of unborn. 1865. I have never uttered anything base or anything that is obscene. The divine Saraswati, who is truth's self, who is the daughter of Brahma and is otherwise called by the name of Rita, represents my speech and always dwells in my tongue. The existent and the non-existent have been merged by me in my soul. The rishis dwelling in Pushkara, which is regarded as the abode of Brahman, called me by the name of truth. I have never swerved from the attribute of sattva, and know that the attribute of sattva has flowed from me. In this birth also of mine, O Dhananjaya, my ancient attribute of sattva has not left me, so that in even this life, establishing myself on sattva, I set myself to acts without ever wishing for their fruits. Cleansed of all sins as I am through the attribute of sattva, which is my nature, I can be beheld by the aid of that knowledge only which arises from adoption of the attribute of sattva. I am reckoned also among those that are wedded to that attribute. For these reasons am I known by the name of Sattwata. 1866, I tell the earth, assuming the form of a large ploughshare of black iron. And because my complexion is black, therefore am I called by the name of Krishna. I have united the earth with water, space with mind, and wind with light. Therefore am I called Vaikuntha. 1867. The cessation of separate conscious existence by identification with Supreme Brahman is the highest attribute or condition for a living agent to attain. And since I have never swerved from that attribute or condition, I am, therefore, called by the name of Avakiluta. 1868. The earth and the firmament are known to extend in all directions. And because I uphold them both, therefore am I called by the name of Adhyaksha. Persons conversant with the Vedas and employed in interpreting the words used in those scriptures adore me in sacrifices by calling upon me by the same name. In days of yore, the great rishis, while engaged in practicing severe austerities, said common no one else in the universe than the puissant Narayana is capable of being called by the name of Adhyaksha. Clarified butter which sustains the lives of all creatures in the universe constitutes my effulgence. It is for this reason that Brahmanas conversant with the Vedas and possessed of concentrated souls call me by the name of Gritachas. 1869. There are three well-known constituent elements of the body. They have their origin in action, and are called bile, phlegm, and wind. The body is called a union of these three. All living creatures are upheld by these three, and when these three become weakened, living creatures also become weakened. It is for this reason that all persons conversant with the scriptures bearing on the science of life call me by the name of Tritu. 1870. The holy Dhamma is known among all creatures by the name of Vrisha, O Bharata. Hence it is that I am called the excellent Vrisha in the Vedic lexicon called Nayan Shuka. The word Kapi signifies the foremost of boars, and Dhamma is otherwise known by the name of Vrisha. It is for this reason that Lord of all creatures, viz. Kasyapa, the common sire of the deities and the Asuras, called me by the name Vrishakapi. The deities and the Asuras have never been able to ascertain my beginning, my middle, or my end. It is for this reason that I am sung as Anadi, Amadaya and Ananta. I am the Supreme Lord endued with puissance, and I am the eternal witness of the universe, beholding as I do its successive creations and destructions. I always hear words that are pure and holy, O Dhananjaya, and never hold anything that is sinful. Hence am I called by the name of Sakhisravas. Assuming, in days of old, the form of a boar with a single tusk, O enhancer of the joys of others, I raised the submerged earth from the bottom of the ocean. From this reason am I called by the name of Akasaringa. While I assumed the form of mighty boar for this purpose, I had 3 humps on my back. Indeed, in consequence of this peculiarity of my form at that time that I have come to be called by the name of Drikakad, 3-humped. Those who are conversant with the science propounded by Kapila call the Supreme Soul by the name of Vairensha. That Vairensha is otherwise called the Great Prajapati, or Brahman. Verily I am identical with him, called Vairensha, in consequence of my imparting animation to all living creatures, for I am the creator of the universe. The preceptors of Shanghai philosophy, possessed of definite conclusions regarding all topics, call me the eternal Kepler, staying in the midst of the solar disk with but knowledge for my companion. 1871. On earth I am known to be identical with him who has been sung in the Vedic verses as the effulgent Hiranyagarbha and who is always worshipped by yogins. I am regarded as the embodied form of the rich Veda consisting of 120,000 verses. Persons conversant with the Vedas also call me the embodiment of the Samans of 1,000 branches. Even thus do learned Brahmins that are my devoted worshippers and that are very rare sing me in the Aranyakas. 1872. In the Adhyarys I am sung as the Ajiveda of 6 and 50 and 8 and 7 and 30 branches. 1873. Learned Brahmins conversant with the Atharvans regard me as identical with the Atharvans consisting of 5 kalpas and all the Kshatriyas. 1874. All the subdivisions that exist of the different Vedas in respect of branches and all the verses that compose those branches, and all the vowels that occur in those verses, and all the rules in respect of pronunciation, know, O Dhananjaya, are my work. O Partha, he that rises, at the beginning of creation from the ocean of milk at the earnest invocation of Brahmana and all the deities, and who gives diverse boons unto the diverse deities, is none else than myself. I am he who is the repository of the science of syllables and pronunciation that is treated of in the supplementary portions of the Vedas. Following the path pointed out by Vamadeva, the high-souled Rishi Panchala, through my grace, obtained from that eternal being the rules in respect of the division of syllables and words, for reading the Vedas. Indeed, Galava, born in the Vapravya race, having attained to high ascetic success and obtained a boon from Narayana, compiled the rules in respect of the division of syllables and words, for reading the Vedas. Indeed, Galava, born in the Vapravya race, having attained to the high ascetic success and obtained a boon from Narayana, compiled the rules in respect of the division of syllables and words, and those about emphasis and accent in utterance, and shone as the first scholar who became conversant with those 2 subjects. Kundraka and King Brahmadatta of great energy, 1875, repeatedly thinking of the sorrow that attends birth and death, attained to that prosperity which is acquired by persons devoted to yoga, in course of 7 births, in consequence of my favor. In days of yore, O Partha, I was, for some reason, born as the son of Dharma, O chief of Kuru's race, and in consequence of such birth of mine I was celebrated under the name of Dharma. I took birth in 2 forms, viz., as Nara and Narayana. Riding on the vehicle that helps towards the performance of scriptural and other duties, I practiced, in those 2 forms, undying austerities on the breast of Gandhamadana. 1876. At that time the great sacrifice of Daksha took place. Daksha, however, in that sacrifice of his, refused to give a share unto Rudra, O Bharata, of the sacrificial offerings. Urged by the sage Dadichi, Rudra destroyed that sacrifice. He hurled a dart whose flames blazed up every moment. That dart, having consumed all the preparations of Daksha's sacrifice, came with great force towards us, Nara and Narayana, at the retreat of Vadari. With great violence that dart then fell upon the chest of Narayana. Assailed by the energy of that dart, the hair on the head of Narayana became green. In fact, in consequence of this change in the hue of my hair, I came to be called by the name of Manjakisa. 1877. Driven off by an exclamation of Hun which Narayana uttered, the dart, its energy being lost, returned to Sankara's hands. At this, Rudra became highly angry, and as the result thereof he rushed towards the rishis Nara and Narayana, endued with a puissance of severe austerities. Narayana then seized the rushing Rudra with his hand by the throat. Seized by Narayana, the Lord of the universe, Rudra's throat changed color and became dark. From that time Rudra came to be called by the name of Siddhikantha. Meanwhile Nara, for the purpose of destroying Rudra, took up a blade of grass, and inspired it with mantras. The blade of grass, thus inspired, was converted into a mighty battle-axe. Nara suddenly hurled that battle-axe at Rudra, but it broke into pieces. In consequence of that weapon thus breaking into pieces, I came to be called by the name of Kandaparosu. 1878. Arjuna said, in that battle capable of bringing about the destruction of the three worlds, who obtained the victory, O Janardana, do thou tell me this? The Blessed and Holy One said, when Rudra and Narayana became thus engaged in battle, all the universe became suddenly filled with anxiety. The deity of fire ceased to accept libations of even the purest clarified butter duly poured in sacrifices with the aid of Vedic mantras. The Vedas no longer shone by inward light in the minds of the rishis of cleansed souls. The attributes of Rajas and Tamas possessed the deities. The earth trembled. The vault of the firmament seemed to divide in twain. All the luminaries became deprived of their splendor. The Creator, Brahman, himself fell from his seat. The ocean itself became dry. The mountains of Himavat became riven. When such dire omens appeared everywhere, O son of Pandu, Brahma, surrounded by all the deities and the high Sudrishis, soon arrived at that spot where the battle was raging. The four-faced Brahma, capable of being understood with the aid of only the Nairaktas, joined his hands and addressing Rudra, said, "Come, let good happen to the three worlds. Throw down thy weapons, O Lord of the universe, from desire of benefiting the universe. That which is unmanifest, indestructible, immutable, supreme, the origin of the universe, uniform, and the supreme actor, that which transcends all pairs of opposites, and is inactive, has, choosing to be manifested, been pleased to assume this one blessed form, for though double, the two but represent the same form. This Nara and Narayana, the displayed forms of Supreme Brahman, have taken birth in the race of Dharma. The foremost of all deities, these two are observers of the highest vows and endued with the severest penances. Through some reason best known to him, I myself have sprung from the attribute of his grace. Eternal as thou art, for thou hast ever existed since all the past creations, thou too hast sprung from his wrath. With myself, then, these deities, and all the great rishis, do thou adore this displayed form of Brahma, and let peace be unto all the worlds without any delay. Thus addressed by Brahma, Rudra forthwith cast off the fire of his wrath, and set himself to gratify the illustrious and puissant god Narayana. 1879. Indeed, he soon placed himself at the disposal of the adorable boon-giving and puissant god Narayana. That boon-giving god Narayana, who hath his wrath and the senses under control, soon became gratified and reconciled with Rudra. Well adored by the rishis, by Brahma, and by all the deities, that great god, the Lord of the universe, otherwise called by the name of Hari, then addressed the illustrious his honor and said these words: He that knows thee, knows me. He that follows thee, follows me. There is no difference between thee and me. Do thou never think otherwise. The mark made by thy lance on my chest will from this day assume the form of a beautiful whorl, and the mark of my hand on thy throat will also assume a beautiful shape, in consequence of which thou shalt, from this day, be called by the name of Srikantha. The Blessed and Holy One 1880 continued. Having mutually caused such marks on each other's person, the two rishis Nara and Narayana thus made friends with Rudra, and dismissing the deities, once more set themselves to the practice of penances with a tranquil soul. I have thus told thee, O son of Pritha, how in that battle which took place in days of yore between Rudra and Narayana, the latter got the victory. I have also told thee the many secret names by which Narayana is called and what the significations are, O Bharata, of one of those names, which, as I have told thee, the rishis have bestowed upon the great God. In this way, O son of Kunti, assuming diverse forms do I rove at will through the earth, the region of Brahma himself, and that other high and eternal region of felicity called Goloka. Protected by me in the great battle, thou hast won a great victory. That being whom, at the time of all thy battles, thou beldest stalking in thy van, no, O son of Kunti, is no other than Rudra, that god of gods, otherwise called by the name of Kapardin. He is otherwise known by the name of Kala, 1881, and should be known as one that is sprung from my wrath. Those foes whom thou hast slain were all, in the first instance, slain by him. 1882. Do thou bend thy head unto that God of gods, that Lord of endues with immeasurable puissance. With concentrated soul, do thou bend thy head unto that illustrious Lord of the universe, that indestructible deity, otherwise called by the name of Hari. He is none else than that deity who, as I have repeatedly told thee, has sprung from my wrath. Thou hast, before this, heard, O Dhananjaya, of the puissance and energy that reside in him. Section Xlif. Sonaka said, O Soti, excellent is this narrative which thou hast recited. Verily, these ascetics, having heard it, have all been filled with wonder. It is said, O Soti, that a discourse that has Narayana for its topic is more fruitful of merit than sojourns unto all the sacred retreats and ablutions performed in all the sacred waters on the earth. Having listened to this discourse of thine that has Narayana for its topic, that is sacred and capable of cleansing one of every sin, all of us have certainly become holy. Adored of all the worlds, that illustrious and foremost of deities is incapable of being beheld by the deities with Brahma numbering among them and all the rishis. That Narada was able to obtain a sight of the god Narayana, otherwise called Hari, was due, O son of Suta, to the special grace of that divine and puissant Lord. When, however, the celestial rishi Narada had succeeded in obtaining a sight of the Supreme Lord of the universe, residing in the form of Aniruddha, why did he again proceed so quickly to the retreat of Vadari on the breast of Himavat, for beholding those two foremost of godly of rishis, viz., Nara and Narayana? Do you, O Soti, tell us the reason of such conduct on the part of Narada? Soti said, during the continuance of his snake sacrifice, Janamjaya, the royal son of Parikshit, availing himself of an interval in the sacrificial rites, and when all the learned Brahmanas were resting, O Sonaka, that king of kings, addressed the grandfather of his grandfather, viz., the island-born Krishna, otherwise called Vyasa, that ocean of Vedic law, that foremost of ascetics endued with puissance, and said these words. Janamjaya said, after the celestial rishi Narada had returned from White Island, reflecting, as he came, on the words spoken to him by the holy Narayana, what indeed did the great ascetic next do? Arrived at the retreat known by the name of Vadari on the breast of the Himvat mountains, and seeing the two rishis Nara and Narayana who were engaged in severe austerities at that spot. How long did Narada dwell there, and what were the topics of conversation between him and the two rishis? This discourse on Narayana, that is really a notion of knowledge, has been raised by thy intelligent self by churning that vast history called Bharata, which consists of 100,000 verses. As butter is raised from curds, sandalwood from the mountains of Malaya, the Aranyakas from the Vedas, and nectar from all the medicinal herbs, after the same manner, O ocean of austerities, hath this discourse that is like nectar and that has Narayana for its object, been raised by thee, O Brahmana, from diverse histories and Puranas existing in the world. Narayana is the Supreme Lord. Illustrious and endued with great puissance, he is the soul of all creatures. Indeed, O foremost of regenerate ones, the energy of Narayana is irresistible. Into Narayana, at the end of the Kalpa, enter all the deities having Brahman for their foremost, all the rishis with the Gandharvas, and all things mobile and immobile. I think, therefore, that there is nothing holier on earth or in heaven, and nothing higher than Narayana. A sojourner to all the sacred retreats on earth, and ablutions performed in all the sacred waters, are not productive of as much merit as a discourse that has Narayana for its topic. Having listened from the beginning to this discourse on Hari, the Lord of the universe, that destroys all sins, we feel that we have been cleansed of all our sins and sanctified entirely. Nothing wonderful was accomplished by my ancestor Dhananjaya, who was the victor in the great battle on Kurukshetra, for it should be remembered that he had Vasudeva for his ally. I think that person could have nothing unattainable in the three worlds, who had for his ally Vishnu himself, that great Lord of the universe. Exceedingly fortunate and commendable were those ancestors of mine, since they had Janardana himself for looking after their temporal and spiritual prosperity. Adored of all the worlds, the holy Narayana is capable of being beheld with the aid of austerities alone. They, however, succeeded in beholding Narayana, adorned with a beautiful whorl on his chest. More fortunate than my ancestors was the celestial Rishi Narada, the son of Pramasti. Indeed, I think that Narada, who transcends all destruction, was endued with an energy that was not little. For repairing to White Island he had succeeded in beholding the person of Hari. Indeed, it is evident that the sight he had obtained of the Supreme Lord was due to only the grace of that being. Fortunate was Narada inasmuch as he had succeeded in beholding Narayana as existing in the form of Aniruddha. Having beheld Narayana in that form, why did Narada hasten once more to the retreat of Vadari for the purpose of beholding Nara and Narayana? What was the reason, O ascetic, of this step taken by Narada? How long also did Narada the son of Pramasti, after his return from White Island and arrival at Vadari and meeting with the two rishis Nara and Narayana, live there, and what conversations had he with them? What did those two highest and foremost of rishis say unto him? It behoveth thee to say all this unto me. Vaisampayana said, 1883, Salutations unto the holy Vyasa of immeasurable energy. Through his grace I shall recite this narrative having Narayana for its topic. Arrived at White Island, Narada beheld the immutable Hari. Leaving that spot he quickly proceeded, O king, to the mountains of Meru, bearing in his mind those weighty words that Paramatma, the Supreme Lord, had said unto him. Arrived at Meru he became filled with wonder at the thought, O king, of what he had achieved. And he said unto himself, How wonderful is it! The journey I have performed is a long one. Having proceeded to such a distance, I have come back safe and sound. From the mountains of Meru he then proceeded towards Gandhamadana. Traversing through the skies he quickly alighted upon that extensive retreat known by the name of Vadari. There he beheld those ancient deities, viz., those two foremost of rishis, called Nara and Narayana, engaged in the practice of penances, observing high vows, and devoted to the worship of their own selves. Both of those adorable persons bore on their chests the beautiful whorls called Srivatsa, and both had matted locks on their heads. And in consequence of the effulgence with which they illumined the world, they seemed to transcend the very sun in energy. The palms of each bore the mark called the swan's foot. The soles of their feet bore the mark of the discus. Their chests were very broad, their arms reached down to their knees. Each of them had 4 mushkas. 1884. Each of them had 60 teeth and 4 arms. 1885. The voice of each was as deep as the roar of the clouds. Their faces were exceedingly handsome, their foreheads broad, their brows fair, their cheeks well formed, and their noses aquiline. The heads of those two deities were large and round, resembling open umbrellas. Possessed of these marks, they were certainly very superior persons in appearance. Beholding them, Narada became filled with joy. He saluted them with reverence and was saluted by them in return. They received the celestial rishi, saying welcome, and made the ordinary inquiries. Beholding those two foremost of beings, Narada began to reflect within himself. These two foremost of rishis seemed to be very like, in appearance, and to those rishis respected by all, whom I have seen in White Island. Thinking in this way, he circumambulated them both and then sat down on the excellent seat made of kusa grass that had been offered unto him. After this, those two rishis that were the abode of penances, of famous achievements, and of energy, and were endued with tranquility of heart and self-restraint, went through their morning rites. They then, with controlled hearts, worshipped Narada with water to wash his feet and the usual ingredients of the arghya. Having finished their morning rites and the observances necessary for receiving their guest, they sat down on two seats made of wooden planks. 1886. When those two rishis took their seats, that place began to shine with peculiar beauty, even as the sacrificial altar shines with beauty in consequence of the sacred fires when libations of clarified butter are poured upon them. Then Narayana, seeing Narad refreshed from fatigue and seated at his ease and well pleased with the rites of hospitality he had received, addressed him, saying these words. Nara and Narayana said, Hast thou seen in White Island the Paramatma, Supreme Soul, who is eternal and divine, and who is the high source whence we have sprung? Narada said, I have seen that beautiful being who is immutable and who has the universe for his form. In him dwell all the worlds, and all the deities with the rishis. Even now I behold that immutable being, in beholding you too. Those marks and indications that characterize Hari himself of undisplayed form, characterize you too that are endued with forms displayed before the senses. 1887. Verily, I behold both of you by the side of that great God. Dismissed by the Supreme Soul, I have today come hither. In energy and fame and beauty, who else in the three worlds can equal him than you two that have been born in the race of Dharma? He has told me the entire course of duties having reference to Kshatrajna. He has also told me of all those incarnations which he will, in the future, have in this world. The inhabitants of White Island, whom I have seen, are all divested of the five senses that are owned by ordinary persons. All of them are of awakened souls, endued as they are with true knowledge. They are, again, entirely devoted to the foremost of beings, viz., the Supreme Lord of the universe. They are always engaged in worshipping that great deity, and the latter always sports with them. The Holy and Supreme Soul is always fond of those that are devoted to him. He is fond also of the regenerate ones. Always fond of those that are devoted to him, he sports with those worshippers of his. Enjoyer of the universe, pervading everything, the illustrious Madhava is ever affectionate towards his worshippers. He is the actor, he is the cause, and he is the effect. He is endued with omnipotence and immeasurable splendor. He is the cause whence all things spring. He is the embodiment of all the scriptural ordinances. He is the embodiment of all the topics. He is possessed of great fame. Uniting himself with penances, he has illumined himself with a splendor that is said to represent an energy that is higher than what occurs in White Island. Of soul cleansed by penances, he has ordained peace and tranquility in the three worlds. With such an auspicious understanding, he is engaged in the observance of a very superior vow which is the embodiment of holiness. That realm where he resides, engaged in the austerest penances, the sun does not warm and the moon does not shine, though the wind does not blow. Having constructed an altar measuring 8 fingers' breadth, the illustrious creator of the universe is practicing penances there, standing on one foot, with arms upraised, and with face directed towards the east, reciting the Vedas with their branches. He is engaged in practicing the severest austerities. Whatever libations of clarified butter or meat are poured on the sacrificial fire according to the ordinances of Brahma, by the rishis, by Pasupati himself, by the rest of the principal deities, by the Daityas, the Danavas, and the Rakshasas, all reach the feet of that great divinity. Whatever rites and religious acts are performed by persons whose souls are entirely devoted to him, are all received by that great deity on his head. No one is dearer to him in the 3 worlds than those persons that are awakened and possessed of high souls. Dearer even than those persons is one that is entirely devoted to him. Dismissed by him who is the supreme soul, I am coming here. This is what the illustrious and holy Hari has himself said unto me. I shall henceforth reside with you too, devoted to Narayana in the form of Aniruddha. Section CCCXLV. Nara and Narayana said, Deserving art thou of the highest praise, and highly favoured hast thou been, since thou hast beheld the puissant Narayana himself, in the form of Aniruddha. None else, not even Brahma himself, who was sprung from the primal lotus, has been able to behold him. That foremost of Purushas, endued with puissance and holiness, is of unmanifest origin and incapable of being seen. These words that we say unto thee are very true, O Narada. There exists no one in the universe that is dearer to him than one that adores him with devotion. It is for this, O best of regenerate ones, that he showed himself unto thee. No one can repair to that realm where the Supreme Soul is engaged in the observance of penances, except we two, O foremost of regenerate persons. In consequence of that spot being adorned by him, its splendour resembles the effulgence of 1,000 suns collected together. 1888. From that illustrious being, O Brahmana, from him who is the origin of the creator of the universe, O foremost of all persons endued with forgiveness, springs the attribute of forgiveness which attaches to the earth. 1889. It is from that illustrious being who seek the welfare of all beings, that rasa, taste, hath arisen. The attribute of rasa attaches to the waters which are, again, liquid. It is from him that heat or light having the attribute of form or vision has arisen. It attaches itself to the sun, in consequence of which the sun becomes able to shine and give heat. It is from that illustrious and foremost of beings that touch also has arisen. It is attached to the wind, in consequence of which the wind moves about in the world, producing the sensation of touch. It is from that puissant Lord of the entire universe that sound has arisen. It attaches to space, which, in consequence thereof, exists uncovered and unconfined. It is from that illustrious being that mind, which pervades all beings, has arisen. It attaches to Chandramas, in consequence of which Chandramas comes to be invested with the attribute of displaying all the things. That spot with the divine Narayana, that partaker of the libations and other offerings made in sacrifices, resides with knowledge alone for his companion, has in the Vedas been called by the name of the productive cause of all things, or Saturday 1890, the path that is theirs, O foremost of regenerate persons, that are stainless and that are freed from both virtue and sin, is fraught with auspiciousness and felicity. Aditya, who is the dispeller of the darkness of all the worlds, is said to be the door through which the emancipate must pass. Entering Aditya, the bodies of such persons become consumed by his fire. They then become invisible, for after that they cannot be seen by anybody at any time. Reduced into invisible atoms, they then enter, Narayana in manifested form and residing in the middle of the region covered by Aditya, into the form of Aniruddha, losing all physical attributes and being altogether and transformed into mind alone. They then enter into Pradama. Passing out of Pradama, those foremost of regenerate persons, including both those that are conversant with Sankhya philosophy and those that are devoted to the Supreme Deity, then enters Sankhasana, who is otherwise called Jiva. After this, divested of the three primal attributes of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, those foremost of regenerate beings quickly enter the Paramatma, Supreme Soul, otherwise called Kshrijna, and which itself transcends the three primal attributes. Know that Vasudeva is he when called Kshrijna. Verily shouldst thou know that Vasudeva is the abode or original refuge of all things in the universe. Only they whose minds are concentrated, who are observant of all kinds of restraint, whose senses are controlled, and who are devoted to one, succeed in entering Vasudeva. We too, O foremost of regenerate ones, have taken birth in the house of Dharma. Residing in this delightful and spacious retreat, we are undergoing the austerest penances. We are thus engaged, O regenerate one, being moved by the desire of benefiting those manifestations of the Supreme Deity, dear to all the celestials, that will occur in the three worlds, for achieving diverse feats that are incapable of being achieved by any other being. In accordance with such ordinances as are uncommon and as apply to us two only, O best of regenerate persons, we are duly observing all excellent and high vows brought with the austerest penances. Thou, O celestial Rishi, endued with wealth of penances, wert beheld by us in White Island when thou wert there. Having met with Narayana, thou hast made a particular resolution, which is known to us. In the three worlds consisting of mobile and immobile beings, there is nothing that is unknown to us. Of good or evil that will occur or has occurred or is occurring, that God of gods, O great ascetic, has informed thee. Vaisampayana continued, having heard these words of Nara and Narayana, both of whom were engaged in the practice of the austerest penances. The celestial Rishi Narada joined his hands in reverence and became entirely devoted to Narayana. He employed his time in mentally reciting, with due observances, innumerable sacred mantras that are approved by Narayana, worshipping the Supreme Deity Narayana, and adoring those two ancient rishis also that has taken birth in the house of Dharma. The illustrious Rishi Narada, endued with great energy, continued to reside, thus employed, in that retreat, called Vadari, on the breast of Himavat, belonging to Nara and Narayana, for 1,000 years as measured by the standard of the celestials. Section Xlvi. Vaisampayana said, on one occasion, while residing in the retreat of Nara and Narayana, Narada the son of Pramasti, having duly accomplished the rites and observances in honor of the deities, set himself to perform thereafter the rites in honor of the Pitris. Beholding him thus prepared, the eldest son of Dharma, viz., the puissant Nara, addressed him, saying, Whom art thou worshipping, O foremost of regenerate persons, by these rites and observances in connection with the deities and the Pitris? O foremost of all persons endued with intelligence, tell me this, agreeably to the scriptures. What is this that thou art doing? What also are the fruits desired by thee of those rites thou hast addressed thyself in performing? Narada said, Thou saidst unto me on the former occasion that rites and observances in honor of the deities should be accomplished. Thou saidst that the rites in honor of the deities constitute the highest sacrifice and are equivalent to the worship of the eternal Supreme Soul. Instructed by that teaching, I always sacrifice in honor of the eternal and immutable Vishnu, through these rites that I perform in worshipping the deities. It is from that Supreme Deity that Brahma, the grandsire of all the worlds, shook his rise in days of yore. That Brahma, otherwise called Pramshakti, filled with cheerfulness, caused my sire, Daksha, to start into being. I was the son of Brahma, created before all others, by a fiat of his will, although I had to take birth afterwards as the son of Daksha through a curse of that rishi. O righteous and illustrious one, I am performing these rites in honor of the Baitres for the sake of Narayana, and agreeable to those ordinances that have been laid down by himself. The illustrious Narayana is the father, mother, and grandfather of all creatures. In all sacrifices performed in honor of the Baitres, it is that Lord of the universe who is adored and worshipped. On one occasion, the deities, who were sires, taught their children the Srutis. Having lost their knowledge of the Srutis, the sires had to acquire it again from those sons unto whom they had communicated it. In consequence of this incident, the sons, who had thus to communicate the mantras unto their sires, acquired the status of sires, and the sire, for having obtained the mantras from their sons, acquired the status of sons. 1891. Without doubt, what the deities did on that occasion is well known to you too. Sons and sires, on that occasion, had thus to worship each other. Having first spread some blades of kusa grass, the deities and the Baitres, who were their children, placed 3 pindas thereon and in this way worshipped each other. I wish to know, however, the reason why the Baitres in days of yore acquired the name of pindas. Nara and Narayana said, the earth, in days of yore, with her belt of seas, disappeared from the view. Govinda, assuming the form of a gigantic boar, raised her up, with his mighty tusk. Having replaced the earth in her former position, that foremost of Purushas, his body smeared with water and mud, set himself to do what was necessary for the world and its denizens. When the sun reached the meridian, and the hour, therefore, came for saying the morning prayers, the puissant Lord, suddenly shaking off 3 balls of mud from his tusk, placed them upon the earth, O Narada, having previously spread thereon certain blades of grass. The puissant Vishnu dedicated those balls of mud unto his own self, according to the rites laid down in the eternal ordinance. Regarding the 3 balls of mud that the puissant Lord had shaken off from his tusks as pindas, he then, with sesame seeds of oily kernel that arose from the heat of his own body, himself performed the rite of dedication, sitting with face turned towards the east. That foremost of deities then, impelled by the desire of establishing rules of conduct for the denizens of the 3 worlds, said these words. Vrishakapi said, I am the creator of the worlds. I am resolved to create those that are to be called Baitres. Saying these words, he began to think of those high ordinances that should regulate the rites to be gone through in honor of the Baitres. While thus engaged, he saw that the 3 balls of mud, shaken off his tusk, had fallen towards the south. He then said unto himself, these balls, shaken off my tusk, have fallen on the earth towards the southern direction of her surface. Led by this, I declare that these should be known henceforth by the name of Baitres. Let these 3 that are of no particular shape, and that are only round, come to be regarded as Baitres in the world. Even thus do I create the eternal Baitres. I am the father, the grandfather, and the great-grandfather, and I should be regarded as residing in these 3 pindas. There is no one that is superior to me, who is the whom I myself may worship or adore with rites. Who, again, is my sire in the universe? I myself am my grandfather. I am, indeed, the grandsire and the sire. I am the one cause of all the universe. Having said these words, that god of gods, Vrishakapi by name, offered those pindas, O learned Brahmana, on the breast of the Varaha mountains, with elaborate rites. By those rites he worshipped his own self, and having finished the worship, disappeared therein then. Hence have the Baitres come to be called by the name of Pinda. Even this is the foundation of the designation. agreeably to the words uttered by Vrishakapi on that occasion, the Pitrus received the worship offered by all. They who perform sacrifices in honor of and adore the Pitrus, the deities, the preceptor or other reverend senior guests arrived at the house, kind, superior Brahmanas, the goddess Earth, and their mothers, in thought, word, and deed, are said to adore and sacrifice unto Vishnu himself. Pervading the bodies of all existent creatures, the illustrious Lord is the soul of all things. Unmoved by happiness or misery, his attitude towards all is equal. Endued with greatness, and of great soul, Narayana has been said to be the soul of all things in the universe. Section Xlvi. Vaisampayana said, having heard these words of Nara and Narayana, the Rishi Narada became filled with devotion towards the Supreme Being. Indeed, with his whole soul he devoted himself to Narayana. Having resided for a full 1,000 years in the retreat of Nara and Narayana, having beheld the immutable Hari, and heard the excellent discourse having Narayana for its topic, the celestial Rishi repaired to his own retreat on the breast of Himavat. Those foremost of ascetics, viz., Nara and Narayana, however, continued to reside in their delightful retreat of Vadari, engaged in the practice of the severest austerities. Thou art born in the race of the Pandavas. Thou art of immeasurable energy. O perpetuator of the race of the Pandavas, having listened to this discourse on Narayana from the beginning, thou hast certainly been cleansed of all thy sins and thy soul has been sanctified. His is neither this world nor the world hereafter, O best of kings, who hates instead of loving and reverencing the immutable Hari. The ancestors of that person who hates Narayana, who is the foremost of deities, and is otherwise called Hari, sink into hell for eternity. O tiger among men, Vishnu is the soul of all beings. How, then, can Vishnu be hated? For in hating him one would hate one's own self. He who is our preceptor, viz., the Rishi Vyasa, the son of Gandhavati, has himself recited this discourse unto us on the glory of Narayana, that glory which is the highest and which is immutable. I heard it from him and have recited it to thee exactly as I heard it, O sinless one. This cult, with its mysteries and its abstract of details, was obtained by Narada, O king, from that Lord of the universe, viz., Narayana himself. Even such are the particulars of this great cult. I have, before this, O foremost of kings, explained it to thee in the Hari Gita, with a brief reference to its ordinances. 1892. Know that the island-born Krishna, otherwise called Vyasa, is Narayana on earth. Who else than he, O tiger among kings, could compile such a treatise as the Mahabharata? Who else than that puissant Rishi could discourse upon the diverse kinds of duties and cults for the observance and adoption of men? Thou hast resolved upon performing a great sacrifice. Let that sacrifice of thine proceed as determined by thee. Having listened to the diverse kinds of duties and cults, let thy horse sacrifice go on. Soti continued, that best of kings, having heard this great discourse, began all those rites that are laid down in the ordinance, for the completion of his great sacrifice. Questioned by thee, O Sonaka, I have duly recited to thee and all these rishis that are denizens of the Naimisha forest, that great discourse having Narayana for its topic. Formerly Narada had recited it to my preceptor in the hearing of many rishis and the sons of Bandhu and in the presence of Krishna and Bhishma also. 1893. The supreme deity Narayana is the lord of all the foremost of rishis, and of the three worlds. He is the upholder of earth herself of vast proportions. He is the receptacle of the Srutis and of the attribute of humility. He is the great receptacle of all those ordinances that should be practiced for attaining to tranquility of heart, as also of all those that go by the name of Yama. He is always accompanied by the foremost of regenerate persons. Let that great deity be thy refuge. Hari ever does what is agreeable and beneficial to the denizens of heaven. He is always the slayer of such asuras as become troublesome to the three worlds. He is the receptacle of penances. He is possessed of great fame. He is the slayer of the deities known by the name of Madhu and Ketaba. He is the ordainer of the ends that are attained by persons acquainted with and observant of scriptural and other duties. He dispels the fears of all persons. He takes the foremost of those offerings that are dedicated in sacrifices. He is thy refuge and protection. He is endued with attributes. He is freed from attributes. He is endued with a quadruple form. He shares the merits arising from the dedication of tanks and the observance of similar religious rites. Unvanquished and possessed of great might, it is he that always ordains the end approachable by the soul alone, of rishis, of righteous deeds. He is the witness of the worlds. He is unborn. He is the one ancient Purusha, endues with the complexion of the sun. He is the Supreme Lord, and he is the refuge of all. Do all of you bow your heads unto him, since he who sprang from the waters, viz., Narayana himself, bends his head unto him. 1894. He is the origin of the universe. He is that being who is called Amrita. He is Minute. He is the refuge upon whom all things depend. He is the one being to whom the attribute of immutability attaches. The Sankhya's and Yojins, of restrained souls, hold him who is eternal in their understandings. Section Xlvi. Janamjaya, Sikh, said, I have heard from thee the glory of the Divine and Supreme Soul. I have heard also of the birth of the Supreme Deity in the house of Dharma, in the form of Nara and Narayana. I have also heard from thee the origin of the Pinda from the mighty Baraha, which form the Supreme Deity had assumed for raising by the submerged earth. I have heard from thee about those deities and rishis that were ordained for the religion of Pravritti and of those that were ordained for the religion of Nivritti. Thou hast also, O regenerate one, discoursed to us on other topics. Thou hast said also unto us of that vast form, with the equine head, of Vishnu, that partaker of the libations and other offerings made in sacrifices, the form, viz., that appeared in the great ocean on the northeast. That form was beheld by the illustrious Brahman, otherwise known by the name of Paramshakti. What, however, were the exact features, and what the energy, the like of which among all great objects, had never appeared before, of that form which Hari, the upholder of the universe, displayed on that occasion? What did Brahman do, O ascetic, after having seen that foremost of deities, him whose likeness had never been seen before, him who was of immeasurable energy, him who had the equine head, and him who was sacredness itself? O regenerate one, this doubt hath arisen in our mind about this ancient subject of knowledge. O thou of foremost intelligence, for what reason did the Supreme Deity assume that form and display himself in it unto Brahman? Thou hast certainly sanctified us by discoursing unto us on these diverse sacred subjects. 1895. Soti said, I shall recite to thee that ancient history, which is perfectly consistent with the Vedas, and which the illustrious Vaisampayana recited unto the son of Parikshit on the occasion of the great snake sacrifice. Having heard the account of the mighty form of Vishnu, equipped with a horse head, the royal son of Parikshit too had entertained the same doubt and put the same questions to Vaisampayana. Janamjaya said, Tell me, O best of men, for what reason did Hari appear in that mighty form equipped with a horse head and which Brahma, the creator, beheld on the shores of the great northern ocean on the occasion referred to by yourself? Vaisampayana said, All existent objects, O king, in this world, are the result of a combination of the 5 primal elements, a combination due to the intelligence of the Supreme Lord. The puissant Narayana, endued with infinity, is the Supreme Lord and Creator of the universe. He is the inner soul of all things, and the giver of boons. Divested of attributes, he is again possessed of them. Listen now, O best of kings, to me as I narrate to thee how the destruction is brought about of all things. At first, the element of earth becomes merged in water, and nothing then is seen save one vast expanse of water on all sides. Water then merges into heat, and heat into wind. Wind then merges into space, which in its turn merges into mind. Mind merges into the manifest, otherwise called consciousness or ego. The manifest merges into the unmanifest, or prakriti. The unmanifest, or prakriti, merges into Purusha, Jivatman, and Purusha merges into the Supreme Soul, or Brahman. Then darkness spreads over the face of the universe, and nothing can be perceived. From that primal darkness arises Brahma, endued with the principle of creation. Darkness is primeval and fraught with immortality. Brahma that arises from primeval darkness develops, by its own potency, into the idea of the universe, and assumes the form of Purusha. Such Purusha is called Aniruddha. Divested of sex, it is called otherwise by the name of Pradhana, supreme or primary. That is also known by the name of manifest, or the combination of the triple attribute, O best of kings. He exists with knowledge alone for his companion. That illustrious and puissant being is otherwise called by the name of Viswaksanwahari. Yielding to yoga sleep, he lays himself down on the waters. He then thinks of the creation of the universe of diversified phenomena and fraught with immeasurable attributes. While engaged in thinking of creation, he recollects his own high attributes. From this springs the four-faced Brahma representing the consciousness of Aniruddha. The illustrious Brahma, otherwise called Hiranyagarbha, is the grandsire of all the worlds. Endued with eyes like lotus petals, he takes birth within the lotus that springs from the navel of Aniruddha. Seated on that lotus, the illustrious, puissant, and eternal Brahma of wonderful aspect saw that the waters were on all sides. Adopting the attribute of Sattva Brahma, otherwise called Paramshakti, then commenced to create the universe. In the primeval lotus that was endued with the effulgence of the sun, 2 drops of water had been cast by Narayana that were fraught with great merit. The illustrious Narayana, without beginning and without end, and transcending destruction, cast his eyes on those 2 drops of water. One of those 2 drops of water, of very beautiful and bright form, looked like a drop of honey. From that drop sprang, at the command of Narayana, a daitya of the name of Mad, who made up of the attribute of dharmas, dunas. The other drop of water within the lotus was very hard. From it sprang the daitya Ketaba, made up of the attribute of rajas. Endued thus with the attributes of tamas and rajas, the 2 daityas possessed of might and armed with maces, immediately after their birth, began to rove within that vast primeval lotus. They beheld within it Brahma of immeasurable effulgence, engaged in creating the 4 Vedas, each endued with the most delightful form. Those 2 foremost of Asuras, possessed of bodies, beholding the 4 Vedas, suddenly seized them in the very sight of their creator. The 2 mighty Danavas, having seized the eternal Vedas, quickly dived into the ocean of waters which they saw and proceeded to its bottom. Seeing the Vedas forcibly taken away from him, Brahma became filled with grief. Robbed of the Vedas in this way, Brahma then addressed the Supreme Lord in these words. Brahma said, "The Vedas are my great eyes. The Vedas are my great strength. The Vedas are my great refuge. The Vedas are my high Brahman. All the Vedas, however, have been forcibly taken away from me by the 2 Danavas. Deprived of the Vedas, the worlds I have created have become enveloped in darkness. Without the Vedas, beside me, how shall I succeed in causing my excellent creation to start into existence? Alas, great is the grief I suffer in consequence of the loss of the Vedas. through such agency. My heart is very much pained. It has become the abode of a great sorrow. Who is there that will rescue me from this ocean of grief in which I am sunk for the loss I have endured? Who is there that will bring me the Vedas I have lost? Who is there that will take compassion on me? While Brahma was uttering these words, O best of kings, the resolution suddenly arose in his mind, O foremost of intelligent persons, for hymning the praises of Hari in these words. The puissant Brahma then, with hands joined in reverence, and seizing the feet of his progenitor, sang this highest of hymns in honor of Narayana. Brahma said, I bow to thee, O heart of Brahman. I bow to thee that hast been born before me. Thou art the origin of the universe. Thou art the foremost of all abodes. Thou, O puissant one, art the ocean of yoga with all its branches. Thou art the creator of both what is manifest and what is unmanifest. Thou treadest along the path whose auspiciousness is of inconceivable extent. Thou art the consumer of the universe. Thou art the entire alok, inner soul, of all creatures. Thou art without any origin. Thou art the refuge of the universe. Thou art self-born, for origin thou hast none that is not thyself. As regards myself, I have sprung through thy grace. From thee have I derived my birth. My first birth from thee, which is regarded sacred by all regenerate persons, was due to a fiat of thy mind. My second birth in days of yore was from thy eyes. Through thy grace, my third birth was from thy speech. My fourth birth, O puissant Lord, was from thy ears. My fifth birth, excellent in all respects, was from thy nose, O Lord. My sixth birth was, through thee, from an egg. This is my seventh birth. It has occurred, O Lord, within this lotus, and it is meant to stimulate the intellect and desires of all the beings. At each creation I take birth from thee as thy son, O thou that art divested of the three attributes. Indeed, O lotus-eyed one, I take birth as thy eldest son, made up of sattva, the foremost of three attributes. Thou art endued with that nature which is supreme. Thou springest from thyself. I have been created by thee. The Vedas are my eyes. Hence, I transcend time itself. Those Vedas, which constitute my eyes, have been taken away from me. I have, therefore, become blind. Do thou awake from this yoga sleep. Give me back my eyes. I am dear to thee and thou art dear to me. Thus praised by Brahma, the illustrious Purusha, with face turned towards every side, then shook off his slumber, resolved to recover the Vedas from the deities that had forcibly snatched them away. Applying his yoga puissance, he assumed a second form. His body, equipped with an excellent nose, became as bright as the moon. He assumed an equine head of great effulgence, which was the abode of the Vedas. The firmament, with all its luminaries and constellations, became the crown of his head. His locks of hair were long and flowing, and had the splendor of the rays of the Sunday. The regions above and below became his 2 ears. The earth became his forehead. The 2 rivers Ganga and Saraswati became his 2 hips. The 2 oceans became his 2 eyebrows. The sun and the moon became his 2 eyes. The twilight became his nose. The syllable Om became his memory and intelligence. The lightning became his tongue. The Soma-drinking Bitrus became, it is said, his teeth. The 2 regions of felicity, viz., Goloka and Brahmaloka, became his upper and lower lips. The terrible night that succeeds universal destruction, and that transcends the 3 attributes, became his neck. Having assumed this form endued with the equine head, and having diverse things for its diverse limbs, the Lord of the universe disappeared then and there, and proceeded to the nether regions. Having reached those regions, he set himself to high yoga. Adopting a voice regulated by the rules of the science called Siksha, he began to utter loudly Vedic mantras. His pronunciation was distinct and reverberated through the air, and was sweet in every respect. The sound of his voice filled the nether region from end to end. Endued with the properties of all the elements, it was productive of great benefits. The two Asuras, making an appointment with the Vedas in respect of the time when they would come back to take them up again, threw them down in the nether region, and ran towards the spot whence those sounds appeared to come. Meanwhile, O King, the Supreme Lord with the equine head, otherwise called Hari, who was himself in the nether region, took up all the Vedas. Returning to where Brahma was staying, he gave the Vedas unto him. Having restored the Vedas unto Brahma, the Supreme Lord once more returned to his own nature. The Supreme Lord also established his form with the equine head in the northeastern region of the great ocean. Having, in this way, established him who was the abode of the Vedas, he once more became the equine-headed form that he was. 1896. The two Danavas, Madhu and Ketaba, not finding the person from whom those sounds proceeded, quickly came back to that spot. They cast their eyes around but beheld that the spot on which they had thrown the Vedas was empty. Those two foremost of mighty beings, adopting great speed of motion, rose from the nether region. Returning to where the primeval lotus was that had given them birth, they saw the puissant being, the original creator, staying in the form of an Irada of fair complexion and endued with a splendor resembling that of the moon. Of immeasurable prowess, he was under the influence of yoga sleep, his body stretched on the waters and occupying a space as vast as itself. Possessed of great effulgence and endued with the attribute of stainless sattva, the body of the Supreme Lord lay on the excellent hood of a snake that seemed to emit flames of fire for the resplendence attaching to it. Beholding the Lord thus lying, the two foremost of Danavas roared out a loud laugh. Endued with the attributes of Rajas and Tamas, they said, "This is that being of white complexion. He is now lying asleep. Without doubt, this one has brought the Vedas away from the nether region. Whose is he? Whose is he? Who is he? Why is he thus asleep on the hood of a snake?" Uttering these words, the two Danavas awakened Hari from his yoga slumber. The foremost of beings, viz., Narayana, thus awakened, understood that the two Danavas intended to have an encounter with him in battle. Beholding the two foremost of Asuras prepared to do battle with him, he also set his mind to gratify that desire of theirs. Thereupon an encounter took place between those two on one side and Narayana on the other. The Asuras Madhu and Ketaba were embodiments of the attributes of Rajas and Tamas. Narayana slew them both for gratifying Brahma. He thence came to be called by the name of Madhusudana, slayer of Madhu. Having compassed the destruction of the two Asuras and restored the Vedas to Brahma, the Supreme Being dispelled the grief of Brahma. Aided then by Hari and assisted by the Vedas, Brahma created all the worlds with their mobile and immobile creatures. After this, Hari, granting unto the grandsire intelligence of the foremost order relating to the creation, disappeared there and then forgoing to the place he had come from. It was thus that Narayana, having assumed the form equipped with a horse head, slew the two Danavas Madhu and Ketaba, and disappeared from the sight of Brahma. Once more, however, he assumed the same form for the sake of causing the religion of Pravriti to flow in the universe. Thus did the blessed Hari assume in days of old that grand form having the equine head. This, of all his forms, endued with puissance, is celebrated as the most ancient. That person who frequently listens or mentally recites this history of the assumption by Narayana of the form equipped with the equine head, will never forget his Vedic Kora the law. Having adored with the austerest penances the illustrious deity with the equine head, the Rishi Panchala, otherwise known as Galava, acquired the science of grammar by proceeding along the path pointed out by the deity, Rudra. 1897. I have thus recited to thee, O king, the old story of high Osiris, consistent with the Vedas about which thou hadst asked me. Whatever forms the supreme deity desires to assume with a view to ordaining the various affairs of the universe, he assumes those forms immediately within himself by exercise of his own inherent powers. The supreme deity, endued with every prosperity, is the receptacle of the Vedas. He is the receptacle of penances also. The puissant Hari's yoga. He is the embodiment of the Sankhya philosophy. He is that Parabrahman of which we hear. Truth has Narayana for its refuge. Rita has Narayana for its soul. The religion of Nivritti, in which there is no return, has Narayana for its high abode. The other religion, which has Pravritti for its basis, has equally Narayana for its soul. The foremost of all the attributes that belong to the element of earth is scent. Scent has Narayana for its soul. The attributes of water, O king, were called the tastes of the various kinds. These tastes have Narayana for their soul. The foremost attribute of light is form. Form also has Narayana for its soul. Touch, which is the attribute of wind, is also said to have Narayana for its soul. Sound, which is an attribute of space, has like the others, Narayana for its soul. Mind also, which is the attribute of the unmanifest, Prakriti, has Narayana for its soul. Time, which is computed by the motion of the celestial luminaries, has similarly Narayana for its soul. The presiding deities of fame, of beauty, and of prosperity have the same supreme deity for their soul. Both the Sankhya philosophy and yoga have Narayana for their soul. The Supreme Being is the cause of all this, as Purusha. He is, again, the cause of everything, as Pradhana, or Prakriti. He is Swabhava, the basis on which all things rest. He is the Da or agent, and is the cause of that variety that is witnessed in the universe. He is the diverse kinds of energy that act in the universe. In these 5 ways he is that all-controlling invisible influence of which people speak. Those employed in investigating the several topics of inquiry with the aid of such reasons as are of wide application, regard Hari to be identical with the 5 reasons adverted to above and as the final refuge of all things. Indeed, the puissant Narayana, endued with the highest yoga puissance, is the one topic of inquiry. The thoughts of the denizen of all the worlds, including Brahma and the high Sudrishis, of those that are Sankhyas and Yogins, of those that are Yatis, and of those, generally, that are conversant with the soul are fully known to Kusava, but none of these can know what his thoughts are. Whatever acts are performed in honor of the gods or the Pitris, whatever gifts are made, whatever penances are performed, have Vishnu for their refuge, who is established upon his own supreme ordinances. He is named Vasudeva because of his being the abode of all creatures. He is immutable. He is supreme. He is the foremost of rishis. He is endued with the highest puissance. He is said to transcend the 3 attributes. As time, which runs smoothly without any sign, assumes indications when it manifests itself in the form of successive seasons, even so he, though really divested of attributes, for manifesting himself. Even they that are high soul do not succeed in understanding his motions. Only those foremost of rishis that have knowledge of their souls succeed in beholding in their hearts that Purusha who transcends all attributes. Section 6. Janamjaya said, the illustrious Hari becomes gracious unto them that are devoted to him with their whole souls. He accepts also all worship that is offered to him agreeably to the ordinance of those persons that have burned off their fuel, 1898, and that are divested of both merit and demerit, that have attained the knowledge as handed down from preceptor to preceptor. Such persons always attain to that end which is called the 4th, viz., the essence of the Purushottama or Vasudeva, 1899 through the 3 others. Those persons, however, that are devoted to Narayana with their whole souls at once attain to the highest end. 1900. Without doubt, the religion of devotion seems to be superior to that of knowledge, and is very dear to Narayana. These, without going through the 3 successive stages of Aniruddha, Pradama, and Sankarsana, at once attain to the immutable Hari, the end that is attained by Brahmanas, who, attending to due observances, study the Vedas with the Upanishads according to the rules laid down for regulating such study, and by those that adopt the religion of Yatis, is inferior, I think, to that attained by persons devoted to Hari with their whole souls. Who first promulgated this religion of devotion? Was it some deity or some rishi that declared it? What are the practices of those that are said to be devoted with their whole souls? When did those practices begin? I have doubts on these topics. Do thou remove those doubts. Great is my curiosity to hear thee explain the several points. 1901. Vaisampayana said, when the diverse divisions of the Pandava and the Kuru armies were drawn up in the array for the battle, and when Arjuna became chiefless, the Holy One himself explained the question of what is the end and what is not the end attained by persons of different characters. I have before this recited to thee the words of the Holy One. The religion preached by the Holy One on that occasion is difficult of comprehension. Men of uncleansed souls cannot apprehend it at all. Having created this religion in days of yore, viz., in the Krita age, in perfect consonance with the Samans, it is born, O King, by the Supreme Lord, viz., Narayana, himself. This very topic was raised by the highly blessed Partha to Narada, for the latter's discourse, in the midst of the rishis and in the presence of Krishna and Bhishma. My preceptor, viz., the island-born Krishna, heard what Narada said. Receiving it from the celestial rishis, O best of kings, my preceptor imparted it to me in exactly the same way in which he had obtained it from the celestial rishi. I shall now recite it to thee, O monarch, in the same way as it has been received from Narada. Listen, therefore, to me. In that kalpa when Brahma the creator, O king, shook his birth in the mind of Narayana and issued from the latter's mouth, Narayana himself performed, O Bharata, his deva and patra rites in accordance with this religion. Those rishis that subsist upon the froth of water then obtained it from Narayana. From the froth-eaten rishis, this religion was obtained by those rishis that go by the name of Vaikhanasas. From the Vaikhanasas, Shoma got it. Afterwards, it disappeared from the universe. After the second birth of Brahma, viz., when he sprang from the eyes of Narayana, O king, the grandsire, that is, Brahma, then received this religion from Shoma. Having received it thus, Brahma imparted this religion, which has Narayana for its soul, unto Rudra. In the Krita age of that ancient Kalpa, Rudra, devoted to yoga, O monarch, communicated it to all those rishis that are known by the name of Likaliyas. Through the illusion of Narayana, it once more disappeared from the universe. In the third birth of Brahma, which was due to the speech of Narayana, this religion once more sprang up, O king, from Narayana himself. Then a rishi of the name of Supana obtained it from that foremost of beings. The rishi Supana used to recite this excellent religion, this foremost of cults, 3 times during the day. In consequence of this, it came to be called by the name of Drisopana in the world. This religion has been referred to in the Rig Veda. The duties it inculcates are exceedingly difficult of observance. From the rishi Supana, this eternal religion was obtained, O foremost of men, by the god of wind, that sustainer of the lives of all creatures in the universe. The god of wind communicated it unto such rishis as subsist upon what remains of sacrificial offerings after feeding guests and others. From those rishis this excellent religion was obtained by the great ocean. It once more disappeared from the universe and became merged into Narayana. In the next birth of the high-souled Brahman, when he sprang from the ear of Narayana, listen, O chief of men, to what happened in that kalpa. The illustrious Narayana, otherwise called Hari, when he resolved upon creation, thought of a being who would be puissant enough to create the universe. While thinking of this, a being sprang from his ears competent to create the universe. The Lord of all called him by the name of Brahma. Addressing Brahma, the supreme Narayana said unto him, Do thou, O son, create all kinds of creatures from thy mouth and feet. O thou of excellent vows, I shall do what will be beneficial for thee, for I shall impart to thee both energy and strength sufficient to render thee competent for this task. Do thou receive also from me this excellent religion known by the name of Satvata. Aided by that religion do thou create the greater age and ordain it duly. Thus addressed, Brahma bowed his head unto the illustrious Hari, the god of the gods, and received from him that foremost of all cults with all its mysteries and its abstract of details, together with the Aranyakas Komavis, that cult, which sprang from the mouth of Narayana. Narayana then instructed Brahma of immeasurable energy in that cult, and addressing him, said, Thou art the creator of the duties that are to be observed in the respective yugas. Having said this unto Brahma, Narayana disappeared and proceeded to that spot which is beyond the reach of dharmas, where the unmanifest resides, and which is known by the men of acts without desire of fruits. After this, the boon-giving Brahma, the grandsire of the worlds, created the different worlds with their mobile and immobile creatures. The age that first commenced was highly auspicious and came to be called by the name of Krita. In that age, the religion of Sattva existed, pervading the entire universe. 1902, with the aid of that primeval religion of righteousness, Brahma, the creator of all the worlds, worshipped the Lord of all the deities, viz., the puissant Narayana, otherwise called Hari. Then for the spread of that religion and desirous of benefiting the worlds, Brahman instructed that Manu who is known by the name of Swarokish in that cult. Swarokish Manu, that lord of all the worlds, that foremost of all persons endued with puissance, then cheerfully imparted the knowledge of that cult to his own son, O king, who was known by the name of Sankapada. The son of Manu, viz., Sankapada, communicated the knowledge of that to his own son Shubhanabha, who was the regent of the cardinal and subsidiary points of the compass. When, upon the expiration of the Krita Yuga, the traitor came, that cult once more disappeared from the world. In a subsequent birth of Brahman, O best of kings, viz., that which was derived from the nose of Narayana, O Bharata, the illustrious and puissant Narayana or Hari with eyes like lotus petals, himself sang this religion in the presence of Brahma. Then the son of Brahma, created by a fiat of his will, viz., Sanat Kumara, studied this cult. From Sanat Kumara, the Prajapati Vrina, in the beginning of the great age, O tiger among Kuras, obtained this cult. Vrina, having studied it in this way, taught it to the ascetic Ravya. Ravya, in his turn, imparted it to his son of pure soul, good vows, and great intelligence, viz., Kakshi, that righteous regent of the cardinal and subsidiary points of the compass. After this, that cult, born of the mouth of Narayana, once more disappeared from the world. In the next birth of Brahma, viz., that which he was derived from an egg which sprang from Hari, this cult once more issued from the mouth of Narayana. It was received by Brahma, O king, and practiced duly in all its details by him. Brahma then communicated it, O monarch, to those rishis that are known by the name of Vahashada. From the Vahashadas it was obtained by a Brahmana well versed in the Samaveda, and known by the name of Jesthaya. And because he was well versed with the Samans, therefore was he known also by the name of Jesthaya Samavaratahari. 1903, from the Brahmana known by the name of Jesthaya, This cult was obtained by a king of the name of the Vikampana. After this, that cult, derived from the Pushantari, once more disappeared from the world. During the 7th birth of Brahma, due to the lotus, O king, that sprang from the navel of Narayana, this cult was once more declared by Narayana himself, unto the grandsire of pure soul, the creator of all the worlds, in the beginning of this kalpa. The grandsire gave it in days of yore to Daksha, one of his sons created by a fiat of his will. Daksha, in his turn, imparted it to the eldest of all the sons of his daughters, O monarch, viz. Aditya, who is senior in age to Savitri. From Aditya, Vivaswat obtained it. In the beginning of the Treta Yuga, Vivaswat imparted the knowledge of this cult to Manu. Manu, for the protection and support of all the worlds, then gave it to his son Ikshaku. 1904, promulgated by Ikshaku, that cult overspreads the whole world. When the universal destruction comes, it will once more return to Narayana and be merged in him. The religion which is followed and practiced by the Yatis has, O best of kings, been narrated to thee before this in the Hari Gita, with all its ordinances in brief. The celestial Rishi Narada got it from that Lord of Universe, viz. Narayana himself, O king, with all its mysteries and abstract of details. Thus, O monarch, this foremost of cults is primeval and eternal, incapable of being comprehended with ease and exceedingly difficult of being practiced. It is always upheld by persons wedded to the attribute of sattva. It is by means of acts that are well performed and accomplished with a full knowledge of duties and in which there is nothing of injury to any creature, that Hari, the Supreme Lord, becomes gratified. Some persons adore Narayana as possessed of only one form, viz. that of Aniruddha. Some adore him as endued with two forms, viz. that of Aniruddha and Pradima. Some adore him as having three forms, viz. Aniruddha, Pradima, and Sankarsana. A fourth class adore him as consisting of four forms, viz. Aniruddha, Pradima, Sankarsana, and Vasudeva. Hari is himself the Kshrajna, soul. He is without parts, being ever full. He is the Jiva in all creatures, transcending the five primal elements. He is the mind, O monarch, that directs and controls the five senses. Endued with the highest intelligence, he is the ordainer of the universe, and the creator thereof. He is both active and inactive. He is both cause and the effect. He is the one immutable Purusha, who sports as he likes, O king. Thus have I recited to thee the religion of desireless devotees, O best of kings, incapable of being comprehended by persons of uncleansed souls, but this I acquired through the grace of my preceptor. Persons are very rare, O king, that are devoted to Narayana with whole souls. If, O son of Kuru's race, the world had been full of such persons, that are full of universal compassion, that are endued with knowledge of the soul, and that are always employed in doing good to others, then the greater age would have set in. All men would have betaken themselves to the accomplishment of acts without desire of fruit. It was even in this way, O monarch, that foremost of regenerate persons, viz. the illustrious Vyasa, my preceptor, fully conversant with all duties, discoursed unto King Yudhishthira the just on this religion of devotion, in the presence of many rishis and in the hearing of Krishna and Bhishma. He had obtained it from the celestial rishi Narada, endued with wealth of penances. Those persons that are devoted to Narayana with their whole souls and are desireless succeed in attaining to the region of that highest of deities, identical with Brahma, pure in complexion, possessed of the effulgence of the moon and endued with immutability. Janamjaya said, I see that those regenerate persons whose souls have been awakened practice diverse kinds of duties. Why is it that other Brahmanas, instead of practicing those duties, betake themselves to the observance of other kinds of vows and rites? Vaisampayana said, 3 kinds of disposition, O monarch, have been created in respect of all embodied creatures, viz., that which relates to the attribute of sattva, that which relates to the attribute of rajas, and lastly that which relates to the attribute of tamas, O Bharata. As regards embodied creatures, O perpetuator of Kuru's race, that person is the foremost who is wedded to the attribute of sattva. For, O tiger among men, it is certain that he will attain to emancipation. It is with the aid of this very attribute of sattva that one endues therewith succeeds in understanding the person that is conversant with Brahma. As regards emancipation, it is entirely dependent upon Narayana. Hence it is that persons striving after emancipation are regarded as made up of the attribute of sattva. By thinking of Purushottama, the foremost of beings, the man that is devoted with his whole soul to Narayana acquires great wisdom. Those persons that are endued with wisdom, that have betaken themselves to the practices of Vyatis and the religion of emancipation, those persons of quenched thirst, always find that Hari favors them with the fruition of their desire. 1905. That man subject to birth and death, upon whom Hari casts a kind eye, should be known as endued with the attribute of sattva and devoted to the acquisition of emancipation. The religion followed by a person that is devoted with his whole soul to Narayana is regarded as similar or equal in merit to the system of the Sankhayas. By adopting that religion one attains to the highest end and attains to emancipation which has Narayana for its soul. That person upon whom Narayana looks with compassion succeeds in becoming awakened. 1906. No one, O king, can become awakened through his own wishes. That nature which partakes of both rajas and tamas is said to be mixed. Hari never casts a kind eye upon the person subject to birth and death, that is endued with such a mixed nature and that has, on that account, the principle of poverty in him. Only Brahma, the grandsire of the worlds, looks upon the person that is subject to birth and death because of his mind being overwhelmed with the 2 inferior attributes of rajas and tamas. 1907. Without doubt, the deities and the rishis are wedded to the attributes of sattva, O best of kings. But then they that are divested of that attribute in its subtle form are always regarded to be of mutable nature. 1908. Janamjaya said, how can one that is fraught with the principle of change succeed in attaining to that Purushottama, the foremost of Purusha? Do tell me all this, which is, no doubt, known to thee. Do thou discourse to me also of poverty in due order. Vaisampayana said, that which is the 25th, in the enumeration of topics as made in the Sankhya system, viz., when it becomes able to abstain entirely from acts, succeeds in attaining to the Purushottama, which is exceedingly subtle, which is invested with the attribute of sattva, in its subtle form, and which is fraught with the essences symbolized by 3 letters of the alphabet, viz., A, U, and M. The Sankhya system, the Aranyaka Veda, and the Pancharatra scriptures, are all one and the same and form parts of one whole. Even this is the religion of those that are devoted with their whole souls to Narayana, the religion that has Narayana for its essence. 1909. As waves of the ocean, rising from the ocean, rush away from it only to return to it in the end, even so diverse kinds of knowledge, springing from Narayana, return to Narayana in the end. I have thus explained to thee, O son of Kuru's race, what the religion of sattva is. If thou best competent for it, O Bharata, do thou practice that religion duly. Even thus did the highly blessed Narada explain to my preceptor, the island-born Krishna, the eternal and immutable course, called Dekanta, ending in 1, followed by the whites 1910, as also by the yellow-robed Yatis. Vyasa, gratified with Dharma's son Yudhishthira, imparted this religion to King Yudhishthira the Just, who was possessed of great intelligence. derived from my preceptor, I have also communicated it to thee. O best of kings, this religion is for these reasons exceedingly difficult of practice. Others, hearing it, become as much confounded as thou hast suffered thyself to be. It is Krishna who is the protector of the universe and its beguiler. It is he who is the destroyer and the cause, O monarch. Section CCCL. Janamjaya said, the Sankhya system, the Pancharatra scriptures, and the Aranyaka Vedas, these different systems of knowledge or religion, O regenerate Rishi, were current in the world. Do all these systems preach the same course of duties, or are the courses of duties preached by them, O ascetic, different from one another? Questioned by me, do thou discourse to me on poverty in due order? Vaisampayana said, I bow unto that great Rishi who is the dispeller of darkness, and whom Satyavati bore to Parasara in the midst of an island, who is possessed of great knowledge and who is endued with great liberality of soul. The learned say that he is the origin of the grandest Brahma, that he is the sixth form of Narayana, that he is the foremost of rishis, that he is endued with the puissance of yoga, that as the only son of his parents he is an incarnate portion of Narayana, and that, born under extraordinary circumstances on an island, he is the inexhaustible receptacle of the Vedas. In the Krita age, Narayana of great puissance and mighty energy, created him as his son. Verily, the high Sudvyasa is unborn and ancient and is the inexhaustible receptacle of the Vedas. Janamjaya said, O best of regenerate persons, it was thou that saidest before this that the Rishi Vasishta had a son of the name of Saktri, and that Saktri had a son of the name of Parasara, and that Parasara begot a son named the island-born Krishna, endued with great ascetic merit. Thou tellest me again that Vyasa is the son of Narayana. I ask, was it in some former birth that Vyasa of immeasurable energy had sprung from Narayana? O thou of great intelligence, do tell me of that birth of Vyasa which was due to Narayana. Vaisampayana said, desirous of understanding the meaning of the Srutis, my preceptor, that ocean of penances, who is exceedingly devoted to the observance of all scriptural duties and the acquisition of knowledge, dwelt for some time in a particular region of the Himavat mountains. Endued with great intelligence, he became fatigued with his penances in consequence of the great strain on his energies occasioned by the composition of the Mahabharata. At that time, Sumanta and Jaimini and Pala of firm vows and myself numbering the fourth, and Sukha his own son, attended on him. All of us, O king, in view of the fatigue our preceptor felt, waited dutifully upon him, engaged in doing all that was necessary for dispelling that fatigue of his. Surrounded by these disciples of his, Vyasa shone in beauty on the breast of the Himavat mountains like the lord of all the ghostly beings, viz., Mahadeva, in the midst of those ghostly attendants of his. Having recapitulated the Vedas with all their branches as also the meanings of all the verses in the Mahabharata, one day, with rapt attention, all of us approached our preceptor who, having controlled his senses, was at time wrapped up in thought. Availing ourselves of an interval in the conversation, we asked that foremost of regenerate persons to expound to us the meanings of the Vedas and the verses in the Mahabharata and narrate to us the incidents as well of his own birth from Narayana. Conversant as he was with all topics of inquiry, he at first discoursed to us on the interpretations of the Srutis and the Mahabharata, and then set himself to narrate to us the following incidents relating to his birth from Narayana. Vyasa said, Listen, ye disciples, to this foremost of narratives, to this best of histories that relates again to the birth of a rishi. Appertaining to the Krita age, this narrative has become known to me through my penances, ye regenerate ones. On the occasion of the seventh creation, viz., that which was due to the primeval lotus, Narayana, endued with the ostraced penances, transcending both good and ill, and possessed of unrivaled splendor, at first created Brahma from his navel. After Brahma had started into birth, Narayana addressed him, saying, "Thou hast sprung from my navel. Endued with puissance in respect of creation, do thou set thyself to create diverse kinds of creatures, rational and irrational." Thus addressed by the author of his being, Brahma, with his mind penetrated by anxiety, felt the difficulty of his task and became unwilling to do what he was commenced to do. Bowing his head unto the boon-giving and illustrious Hari, the Lord of the universe, Brahma said these words unto him, "I bow to thee, O Lord of the deities, but I ask, what puissance have I to create diverse creatures? I have no wisdom. Do thou ordain what should be ordained in view of this." Thus addressed by Brahma, the Lord of the universe, viz., Narayana, disappeared there and then from Brahma's sight. The Supreme Lord, the God of gods, the chief of those endowed with intelligence, then began to think. The goddess of intelligence forthwith made her appearance before the puissant Narayana. Himself transcending all yoga, Narayana then, by dint of yoga, applied the goddess of intelligence properly. The illustrious and puissant and immutable Hari, addressing the goddess of intelligence who was endued with activity and goodness and all the puissance of yoga, said unto her these words, "For the accomplishment of the task of creating all the worlds do thou enter into Brahma." Commanded thus by the Supreme Lord, intelligence forthwith entered Brahma. When Hari beheld that Brahma had become united with intelligence, he once more addressed him, saying, "Do thou now create diverse kinds of creatures." Replying unto Narayana by uttering the word yes, Brahma reverently accepted the command of his progenitor. Narayana then disappeared from Brahma's presence, and in a moment repaired to his own place, known by the name of Diva, light or effulgence. Returning to his own disposition of unmanifestness, Hari remained in that state of oneness. After the task of creation, however, had been accomplished by Brahma, another thought arose in the mind of Narayana. Indeed, he reflected in this strain: Brahma, otherwise called Paramshakti, has created all these creatures, consisting of Daityas and Danavas and Gandharvas and Rakshasas. The helpless earth has become burthened with the weight of creatures. Many among the Daityas and Danavas and Rakshasas on earth will become endued with great strength. Possessed of penances, they will at diverse times succeed in acquiring many excellent boons. Swelling with pride and might in consequence of those boons that they will succeed in obtaining, they will oppress and afflict the deities and the rishis possessed of ascetic might. It is, therefore, meet that I should now and then lighten the burthen of the earth, by assuming diverse forms one after another as occasion would require. I shall achieve this task by chastising the wicked and upholding the righteous. Thus looked after by me, the earth, which is the embodiment of truth, will succeed in bearing her load of creatures. Assuming the form of a mighty snake, I myself have to uphold the earth in empty space. Upheld by me thus, she will uphold the entire creation, mobile and immobile. Incarnated on the earth, therefore, in different forms, I shall have to rescue her at such times from peril. Having reflected in this way, the illustrious slayer of mad who created diverse forms in his mind in which to appear from time to time for accomplishing the task in view. Assuming the form of a boar, of man-lion, of the dwarf, and of human beings, I shall quell or slay such enemies of the deities as will become wicked and ungovernable. After this, the original creator of the universe once more uttered the syllable, Bo, causing the atmosphere to resound with it. From this syllable of speech, Saraswati, arose a rishi of the name Saraswat. The son, firstborn of the speech of Narayana, came to be, also called by the name of Apantaradamas. Endued with great puissance, he was fully conversant with the past, the present, and the future. Firm in the observance of vows, he was truthful in speech, 1911, unto that Rishi who, after birth, had bowed his head unto Narayana, the latter, who was the original creator of all the deities and possessed of a nature that was immutable, said those words, Thou shouldst devote thy attention to the distribution of the Vedas, O foremost of all persons endued with intelligence. 1912. Do thou, therefore, O ascetic, accomplish what I command thee. In obedience to this command of the Supreme Lord, from whose speech the Rishi Apandaradharmas sprang into existence, the latter, in the Kalpa named after the self-born Manu, distributed and arranged the Vedas. For that act of the Rishi, the illustrious Hari became gratified with him, as also for his well-performed penances, his vows and observances, and his restraint of the senses or passions. Addressing him, Narayana said, At each Manvantara, O son, thou wilt act in this way with respect to the Vedas. Thou shalt, in consequence of this act of thine, be immutable, O regenerate one, and incapable of being transcended by anyone. When the Kali age will set in, certain princes of Bharata's line, to be called by the name of Kauravas, will take their birth from thee. They will be celebrated over the earth as high-souled princes ruling over powerful kingdoms. Born of thee, dissensions will break out among them, ending in their destruction at one another's hands, excepting yourself. O foremost of regenerate persons, 1913, in that age also, endued with austere penances, thou wilt distribute the Vedas into diverse classes. Indeed, in that dark age, thy complexion will become dark. Thou shalt cause diverse kinds of duties to flow, and diverse kinds of knowledge also. Although endued with austere penances, yet thou shalt never be able to free thyself from desire and attachment to the world. Thy son, however, will be freed from every attachment like unto the Supreme Soul, through the grace of Madhava. It will not be otherwise. He whom learned Brahmanas call the mind-born son of the grandsire, viz., Vasishtha, endued with great intelligence and like unto an ocean of penances, and whose splendour transcends that of the sun himself, will be the progenitor of a race in which a great Rishi of the name of Parasara, possessed of mighty energy and prowess, will take his birth. That foremost of persons, that ocean of Vedas, that abode of penances, will become thy sire, when thou wilt take birth in the Kali age. Thou shalt take thy birth as the son of a maiden residing in the house of her sire, through an act of congress with the great Rishi Parasara. Doubts thou wilt have none with respect to the imports of things past, present, and future. Endued with penances and instructed by me, thou wilt behold the incidents of thousands and thousands of ages long passed away. Thou wilt see through thousands and thousands of ages also in the future. Thou shalt, in that birth, behold me, O ascetic, me that am without birth and death, incarnated on earth, as Krishna of Yadu's race, armed with a discus. All this will happen to thee, O ascetic, through the merit that will be thine in consequence of thy ceaseless devotion to me. These words of mine will never be otherwise. Thou shalt be one of the foremost of creatures. Great shall be thy fame. Surya Sunny, Saturn, will, in a future kalpa, take birth as the great Manu of that period. During that Manvantara, O son, thou shalt, in respect of merits, be superior to even the Manas of the several periods. Without doubt, thou shalt be so through my grace. Whatever exists in the world represents the result of my exertion. The thoughts of others may not correspond with their acts. As regards myself, however, I always ordain what I think, without the least impediment. 1914. Having said these words unto the Rishi Apandaradharmas, otherwise called by the name of Saraswat, the Supreme Lord dismissed him, saying unto him, Go. I am he that was born as Apandaradharmas through the command of Hari. Once more have I taken birth as the celebrated Krishnavapayana, a delighter of the race of Vasishta. 1915. I have thus told you, my dear disciples, the circumstances of my own former birth, which was due to the grace of Narayana, in so much that I was a very portion of Narayana himself. Ye foremost of intelligent persons, I underwent, in days of yore, the austerest penances, with the aid of the highest abstraction of the mind. Ye sons, moved by my great affection for yourselves that are devoted to me with reverence, I have told you everything relating to what you wished to know from me, viz., my first birth in days of remote antiquity, and that other birth subsequent to it, viz., the present one. Vaisampayana continued, I have thus narrated to thee, O monarch, the circumstances connected with the former birth of our revered preceptor, viz., Vyasa of unstained mind, as asked by thee. Listen to me once again. There are diverse kinds of cults, O royal sage, that go by diverse names such as Sankhya, Yoga, the Pancharatra, Vedas, and Pasupati. The promulgator of Sankhya cult is said to be the great Rishikapla. The primeval Hiranyagarbha, and none else, is the promulgator of the yoga system. The Rishi Apandaratamas is said to be the preceptor of the Vedas. Some call that Rishi by the name of Prachinagarbha. The cult known by the name of Pasupata was promulgated by the Lord of that master of all creatures, viz., the cheerful Shiva, otherwise known by the name of Srikantha, the son of Brahma. The illustrious Narayana is himself the promulgator of the cult, in its entirety, contained in the Pancharatra scriptures. In all these cults, O foremost of kings, it is seen that the puissant Narayana is the one sole object of exposition. According to the scriptures of these cults and the measure of knowledge they contain, Narayana is the one sole object of worship they inculcate. Those persons whose visions, O king, are blinded by darkness, fail to understand that Narayana is the supreme soul pervading the entire universe. Those persons of wisdom who are the authors of the scriptures say that Narayana, who is a rishi, is the one object of reverent worship in the universe. I say that there is no other being like him. The supreme deity, called by the name of Hari, resides in the hearts of those that have succeeded, with the aid of the scriptures and of inference, in dispelling all doubts. Madhava never resides in the hearts of those that are under the sway of doubts, and that would dispute away everything with the aid of false dialectics. They that are conversant with the Pancharatra scriptures, that are duly observant of the duties laid down therein, and that are devoted to Narayana with their whole souls, succeed in entering into Narayana. The Sankhya and the Yoga systems are eternal. All the Vedas, again, O monarch, are eternal. The Rishis, in all these systems of cult, have declared that this universe existing from ancient times is Narayana's self. Thou shouldst know that whether acts, good or bad, are laid down in the Vedas, and occurrence in heaven and earth, between the sky and the waters, are all caused by inflow from that ancient Rishi Narayana. Section Glai. Janamjaya said, O regenerate one, are there many Purushas, or is there only one? Who, in the universe, is the foremost of Purushas? What, again, is said to be the source of all things? Vaisampayana said, in the speculations of the Sankhya and the Yoga systems, many Purushas have been spoken of, O jewel of Kuru's race. Those that follow these systems do not accept that there is but one Purusha in the universe. 1916. In the same manner in which the many Purushas are said to have one origin in the Supreme Purusha, it may be said that this entire universe is identical with that one Purusha of superior attributes. I shall explain this now, after bowing to my preceptor Vyasa, that foremost of rishis, who is conversant with the soul, endued with penances, self-restrained, and worthy of reverent worship. This speculation on Purusha, O king, occurs in all the Vedas. It is well known to be identical with Rita and truth. The foremost of rishis, viz. Vyasa, has thought upon it. Having occupied themselves with reflection on what is called a Dhyatma, diverse rishis, O king, having Kapila for their first, have declared their opinions on the topic both generally and particularly. Through the grace of Vyasa of immeasurable energy, I shall expound to thee what Vyasa has said in brief on this question of the oneness of Purusha. In this connection is cited the old narrative of the discourse between Brahma, O king, and the three-eyed Mahadeva. In the midst of the ocean of milk, there is a very high mountain of great effulgence like that of gold, known, O monarch, by the name of Vajayanta. Repairing thither all alone, from his own abode of great splendor and felicity, the illustrious deity Brahma used very often to pass his time, engaged in thinking on the course of a Dhyatma. While the four-faced Brahma of great intelligence was seated there, his son Mahadeva, who had sprung from his forehead, encountered him one day in course of his wanderings through the universe. In days of yore, the three-eyed Shiva, endued with puissance and high yoga, while proceeding along the sky, beheld Brahma seated on that mountain and, therefore, dropped down quickly on its top. With a cheerful heart he presented him before his progenitor and worshipped his feet. Beholding Mahadeva prostrated at his feet, Brahma took him up with his left hand. Having thus raised Mahadeva up, Brahma, that puissant and one lord of all creatures, then addressed his son, whom he met after a long time, in these words. The grandsire said, Welcome art thou, O thou of mighty arms. By good luck I see thee after such a long time come to my presence. I hope, O son, that everything is right with thy penances and thy Vedic studies and recitations. Thou art always observant of the austerest penances. Hence I ask thee about the progress and well-being of those penances of thine. Rudra said, O illustrious one, through thy grace, all is well with my penances and Vedic studies. It is all right, again, with the universe. I saw thy illustrious self a long while ago in thy own home of felicity and effulgence. I am coming thence to this mountain that is now the abode of thy feet. 1917. Great is the curiosity excited in my mind by this withdrawal of thyself into such a lone spot from thy usual region of felicity and splendor. Great must the reason be, O grandsire, for such an act on thy part. Thy own foremost abode is free from the pains of hunger and thirst, and inhabited by both deities and asuras, by rishis of immeasurable splendor, as also by Gandharvas and Apsaras. Abandoning such a spot of felicity, thou residest alone in this foremost of mountains. The cause of this cannot but be grave. Brahma said, This foremost of mountains, called Vajayanta, is always my residence. Here, with concentrated mind, I meditate on the one universal Purusha of infinite proportions. Rudra said, Self-born thou art. Many are the Purushas that have been created by thee. Others again, O Brahma, are being created by thee. The infinite Purusha, however, of whom thou speakest, is one and single. Who is that foremost of Purushas, O Brahma, that is being meditated by thee? Great is the curiosity I feel on this point. Do thou kindly dispel the doubt that has taken possession of my mind. Brahma said, O son, many are those Purushas of whom thou speakest. The one Purusha, however, of whom I am thinking, transcends all Purushas and is invisible. The many Purushas that exist in the universe have that one Purusha as their basis, and since that one Purushas is said to be the source whence all the innumerable Purushas have sprung, hence all the latter, if they succeed in divesting themselves of attributes, become competent to enter into that one Purusha who is identified with the universe, who is supreme, who is the foremost of the foremost, who is eternal, and who is himself divested of and is above all attributes.